Good evening. Welcome to the School Building Committee meeting for January
first
8th,
one. The first
2013.
When you're doing that,
you like to see the first three.
Okay. We're going to hear from the public. I don't believe so. Okay. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from December 11th, 2012.
We didn't have minutes, we had notes,
They're just
right?
notes.
No, no, the 11th was minutes, the 18th, there was no quorum. The 11th is official minutes. We had a meeting, this is December 11th, this is a couple meetings ago.
Can I take a look?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for December 11th.
Did you hand those out?
Second.
We don't need to.
Any discussion? Have you had discussion?
Yeah, I remember.
I feel like it's
All in favor?
You hand them out,
Aye.
just
Opposed?
start looking at that, not
All right,
looking at
motion
you.
carries. Okay. All right, invoices. All right, I think we're gonna do these in two separate ones. We have municipal's invoice for December 2012 for a total of $12,765. And we also have the town attorney Copeland and Page bill that we have to approve from December, which was for a total of $770. So we're looking to approve invoices for a total of $13,535. Anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on either of these two invoices for municipal or Copeland? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. They both are passed. Okay. Carl, do you have a copy of the new contract?
The amendments?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, because the Board of Selectmen ultimately has to approve DRA's contract. Jeff, Dave, and Mike, and Pat had gone over and reviewed the amendment. They had asked for a reduction in design development fee, which DRA had agreed to. So there's an amendment, and I believe that the new revised amount, Carl, for your contract for this next phase, design development through complete construction phase, is $3,215,000. Is that correct?
I don't have that total, but I have the full total for all the phases.
That
From-
actually, that's
Oh,
all
yeah,
the
that is
phases.
the
Yeah,
total.
that's everything. It
So-
totals all
so
the way
that
down.
is- That's the total, right?
the total all the way down.
$3,215,000, that's the new revised one.
No, I'm not sure which one you're reading.
So it's 30,000 less?
Yes.
Correct. They took $30,000 out of the design development phase.
It should be, I don't, it should be 3345602.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
What is
I
it?
got 3,2.
3,345,602 would be the bottom line.
So it's
Amendment
increased.
number 2.
Oh, wait, that's
No,
that's
because
higher
with
than
the-
the,
Yeah, the
Oh.
original you had didn't include some of the
Didn't
feasibility,
include the
feasibility study.
previous additional services and reimbursables,
There's $50,000.
which, that's why there are two amendments now.
okay, I'm not doing
It's sort of a housekeeping one to bring it up to speed with everything that's been paid to date and approved to date.
Okay.
And the second one is for the balance of the phases, design development through the rest of the project.
Okay, so
So-
what is the amount that, Dave, what is the amount that we are voting on?
The one I just named, that's the right amounts, Michelle.
Right.
The,
The invoice?
the two
Oh, okay,
invoices,
okay.
3345, you see
Yep,
that?
yep, okay.
602, yeah.
So that
Right.
is, now that's total, including feasibility and everything, that's your total contract
Exactly,
amount, okay.
Including all the amendments
Okay.
that
All the
they've done, yeah.
amendments,
And that has the 30,000 taken out?
yes.
All the reimbursables to date, all the reimbursable consultants all the way through, and then it projects everything else through.
Okay,
So
All
it's 300,000, it's not 30. that they increased it, because this figure is 3,245. Am I looking at the right invoice?
3 million.
Right, but it didn't include,
The previous
Right.
invoices
That
didn't
was-
show
okay.
those separate billings, Tilly, that have already been paid and approved. And for housekeeping purposes, I guess we wanted to get it all on there, so we've actually added it on there, but you've already approved and paid those. It's the balance of the project where the fees were reduced.
See, 'cause this is the January of December, and that one's up
But
too.
it's still not the same figure.
It's not
No,
the same because
You don't have a
during the
copy, we just
feasibility.
resolved this yesterday.
Right.
And Michelle has the updated copy, and Mike Bell has the updated.
So there is a revised contract though, correct, with all the
Yes.
correct figures that is going to the selectmen and Pat has.
That's
There's
right.
an original contract that they had, the 420.
Yep,
Then there's Amendment 1, which brings it up to brings it up to 550,000 and some change.
Mm-hmm.
That brings it up to all the way through where they were when we stopped, including the reimbursables that were paid, or that
Okay.
were
okay.
budgeted.
All right,
Then
so,
we took it from there, and Amendment 2 now takes it all the way through the completion of the project. And MSBA wants to see the progression of the original, and then the First Amendment, which brings it all the way up to where we were when we obviously were waiting for the final okay to move forward. And then this actually takes it all the way through the end of the project. The only thing this won't include, I don't think there's anything in there, there's a separate group of reimbursables that they will be billing against, that are separate categories, separate items.
Yep.
And those items, like I say, they will be billing against, but their base fee and everything else that's done to date is all included in that figure right there. And it's all included in the 3011, which has been approved by MSBA.
right, and that's what we had voted on,
Right?
okay.
And they're in the budget.
So here's the total.
so
Here are the two.
I have a quick,
I'm not
quick
doing
question,
that. Yes.
okay? The feasibility study phase, we've paid to date 240,602. Okay, Tilly, I'm sure you're writing this down, right? Schematic design
Wait a
phase.
minute, hold on a
See,
second.
so,
I was
and then I have
trying
a
to
question. So the form you have is not up to date. That's the problem.
Right.
We
This
did
amendment
reduce
one
that
was
30,000, but they had to add back what they hadn't put on the sheet previous. So the feasibility study should say 240,602. So,
Yep.
right? So change your form to 240,602. Schematic design phase to 310,000. Then everything else should match. What's the next one you have? You have six.
I have 714,000.
That's where we took 30,000 out. That's now 684.
That was negotiated down by the 30,000, subject to the negotiations that we had.
And
Right.
the rest of it should match.
Okay.
1,140,500, 162, 770, and 38.5. So my question is this: the 246.02 and the 310 are maxed out, right? Are we done, or those figures are
They're
not
done.
going to increase anymore?
Those are done.
We're done. So those are essentially zeroed out now. Okay, so if you take 240 and 310, like Carl, yeah,
Pat.
Johnny.
It's been a long day.
It's been a long day. Like Pat said, both was $550,602 was the portion for just the feasibility study. Then the rest of it is all going to be new work that they're going to start, obviously, for us. So we did knock $30,000 off. It's just that there was bills in transit that didn't make it to that sheet. So it's right. We verified this completely and approved by MSBA.
Right, it's in the
Everything's- Yeah,
budget.
it's all in the 3011, everything is in there.
So we did take, so this, that number essentially could have been 3,375,602 rather than 3,345,602. So the total of it is 3,345,602. All right? So we've gone over this, we spent a couple of
Also, if you
hours
look at
digging into all
the
this stuff.
amounts due, those have been reduced for both November and December invoices, if you compare with the latest invoices. Because that
Yeah,
phase
nobody
got
has the new
reduced.
invoices because
Right.
we
came out
literally just
today.
got them. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, all right, so what we wanna do is, our committee wants to vote to recommend the contract amount for DRA of $3,345,602 for their contract.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Okay.
Okay, is there any further discussion on
Yes,
this?
so just to let everybody know that myself, Jeff, and Mike, and we went and really went through this, and we want to thank Carl's group for going back to the subs and taking that $30,000 off. We've looked at this, We've compared it to industry average. We've compared it to multiple projects of our size, and the numbers are coming in actually a little bit less in total from a percentage perspective than average groups. There was one school that was, I think they were just under 7%, which I don't know what happened there, but the rest of them are running around that 9%, 9 to 9.5% number, and I think we were at 8.82, I want to say.
Yeah.
On that night around.
Something, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're actually below.
Finish with all the other
Yeah.
items, yeah.
So they've done a good job to, it's a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But people would say, whoa, that's a lot of, 3.3 million, but in terms of, in scope, in comparison to other projects, it's right in line. And actually, it's a little bit less than a lot of the other projects that we looked at. So we did do our due diligence in terms of comparison.
Okay.
It just, when you come to a meeting, you wanna see the invoices beforehand, not
Right.
be passed to you the day, the hour.
Well-
Well, we had the invoices.
But they actually knocked them
But they
down.
The
just-
invoices are actually
but they
lower than
just-
the ones
I
I sent.
understand they're
Yeah.
lower, but
They're
still,
lower.
you just don't like to get things at the 11th hour. That's all I can say.
Right.
I mean, we got all copies. You did all copies, and then they're not the right number.
Well, they did go down, so we're happy about that. Okay, any other discussion on DRA's contract? Okay, all those in favor of approving the contract?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so that's
All
a,
right, so that is
to
going
recommend
now
that the
to
select.
recommend that the Board of Selectmen approve it.
Yep. We'll take it up on Monday.
Thank you.
Okay, and just make sure that you get the final copy from
I have it.
whomever, okay.
Oh, I have, at least in electronic format, but there'll be a signed
Yeah, if you
Mike
can
has
get
signed
that,
copy.
because I do not have that.
The only other question I had was, are those really amendments 1 and 2? Because there was some discussion around that.
We talked about introducing another column to go from the 420 to the 550 to the 3,345,000.
Right.
Do the invoices.
The way Kyle did it, quite frankly, is even better, because what it does is, there's no way to make, this is an MSBA form,
Okay.
there's no room in there, so what they did was they made it Amendment 1, which obviously is the amendment to the original, and this
Right.
bridges off.
It's the
other.
amendment of the amendment, I get it.
Actually, MSBA will like this, quite frankly, better, because it uses their form without changing.
All right, that was my only confusion.
And the MSBA's appropriate, it will actually show as amendment 7 and 8.
Yeah, it didn't line up. Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you.
I have now is the right time. I was asking you the question before the meeting started, but I had a question regarding the site hearing, and I was talking to Pat too. You're planning on having the planning board there and the town planner, and our town planner is not an engineer.
Actually, Tilly, can we just get through this? We're gonna have a whole section on site.
Oh, well, I thought this was part of the contract and the monies. That's what. All right, I'll wait.
Just something, are you talking about something that's part of
I'm talking about
the contract?
my concern is, if the planning board goes and gets their town consultant, which they do for every project, the developer is responsible for the payment. I want to know if your contract is 3 million something, will take care of his expenses.
That's not an architect, no.
Why do we need somebody else to check what our own owner project manager's doing?
Is he an engineer? Is he going to?
We don't, we're not gonna be checking the engineering calculations. Obviously, they will be doing that. If you want
Right.
someone to overview them, you say you bring somebody else in.
Right.
That would be something you would have to decide. Some communities do it, other communities realize it's the town project. It's something you could do. But again, if you did something like that that's outside their contract, it'd be something you'd be taking out of owner contingency.
What do you have, what do we have for permitting right now, budgeted?
For permitting,
Yeah.
I don't remember offhand. I have to look at the 3011. But there's not only the permitting, but there's also the owner's contingency. There's an overall contingency. So if there was something that had to come out of those categories, and as a matter of fact, one of the categories that's a reimbursable, Kyle's figure was about $10,000 less than that particular budget. You could dip into that. So there's several areas where you could go in if you felt it necessary to hire someone to overview the engineering calculations of what they're gonna be doing. Then again, you could take it out of any one of 3 or 4 pots that are out there available for that.
Because I know you, from earlier site discussions, you hadn't thought that about going in front of zoning, and it sounds like that's the third permitting board that is gonna be needed because if it's in the water resource district.
Yeah, as a matter of
Requires-
fact, they just signed a form tonight to, go for that, to submit some of those things to the Concom. So, again, like I say, whatever the town boards need and want that's over and above what is in their contract or our contract, then that would come out of any one of a number of buckets that we currently have available for those kinds of contingency dollars.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what I
well,
want.
well, I did see a permitting budgeted item,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
separate from contingency.
that's correct, yes, and again, but this, you're talking about now having an engineering firm come in and kind of overview.
Oh, it's not a
They're gonna be
firm, it's a
looking at
town consultant.
Yeah,
And he
exactly,
would
yeah.
come in and like you're having it sounds like a preliminary plan for the site approval, where you're gonna have the planning board come in and just review it and the town planner. Well, my feeling is that you're just wasting time if you're just gonna have the town planner there because he's not an engineer and he wouldn't, have the expertise to really evaluate the project at the first session anyway.
Sure.
Well, our understanding is the first session is to introduce the project to the planning board. The town planner has seen it, it's to introduce it to the planning board.
Right.
Informally,
Yeah,
and then prior to actually making the submission of documents that would be checked for engineering and so forth.
yeah, and it's a good idea to do that,
Yeah.
and we encourage that, because if there's any changes
Exactly.
on this,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is that the changes, I think you would want to have, I would say for myself anyway, the town consultant to look at it, to give you a quick, without the calculations, without the expertise, and then later on, he would do a more thorough after, if there was any suggestions that he would bring in. That, okay,
Okay,
sounds
Did Howard-
good, thank you.
Did Howard mention that at all when you were?
he didn't mention anything about an outside consultant, when we talked about having the first informal meeting with the
Yeah.
planning board.
We did talk about the informal meeting,
Yep.
but not an outside.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so we have two outstanding invoices for DRA. We have November's invoice for $171,000 and December's for $95,100. And we will look to approve these tonight based on final approval of the contract from the Board of Selectmen. These cannot be paid until the Board of Selectmen approve the contract, but we can go ahead and give the approval to facilitate payment.
I make a motion
Okay?
that we pay the DRA invoice of $266,100.
For the months of,
November and December 2012.
Second.
Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We will send out a copy of these revised invoices to you guys this week. I have another copy.
We'll keep that if there's anything.
Okay. All right, while that's going on, there's no correspondence. Pat or Chuck, do you want to just go over quickly the OPM report?
Yeah, let me just run through it, and then Chuck can chime in anything he'd like to chime in on. He's been working on it as well.
I didn't.
Previous month's activity, actually, since the kickoff meeting, which was November, there've been a whole series of meetings, some of which we've attended at DRA on all of the various disciplines. Matter of fact, we have another one on Thursday morning, another one on Friday morning, as a matter of fact. And we've gone over all of those issues, a lot of the disciplines, the consultant items with the design group, including the consultants. We've obviously, this past month, again, this is a report going to MSBA, participated in accumulating the information to obviously help in finalizing the architect's contract. Meetings have been scheduled, again, as we just talked about, with the Georgetown Planning Board and Conservation Commission to do the proper introductions. We mentioned once before that the commissioning agent has been assigned by MSBA. They pay the bill for the commissioning agent. They'll be furnished documents at the same time they go to the estimators, so they can provide their input. Needless to say, everything is in a very high state of activity right now, with meetings ongoing, and, you know, we're meeting weekly with the subcommittee groups, we're meeting weekly with the building committee, so there's an awful lot going on. Middle high school, the feasibility study, MSBA has invited the town into the eligibility phase, which you're in. That requires that you have the funding, which you've got at town meeting. It's gonna be acted on January 30th, and that's when you'll be invited into the study, the preferred alternative in the schematic design phase, which you have money for, and that'll obviously move ahead. At that point, they'll probably ask for verification that you want DRA and municipal to continue. We've been advised verbally they will probably allow that as an amendment to the contract, and then that'll start that process rolling. I believe they have everything they need to act on the item at the board meeting on the 30th of January. There've been some forms that we've gone back and forth on, and I think Carol's done a nice job pulling everything together in conjunction with some help from Chuck, putting some of these things together, so we should be all set. Next month's anticipated activity, well, the first one, we've got a number of meetings. We're meeting tonight with the building committee. We have building committee meetings the 15th, the 22nd, and the 5th of February. The design team will meet with the user groups, representative from the building committee, the 10th, the 17th, the 24th, and the 31st. 17th through the 31st, those items will be for discussions on items that require continuation of discussions, whether it be site work or materials. We have our meeting on this Thursday evening is for both interior and exterior materials. Many of those things have already been discussed. You've had presentations made, so I don't think any of these things are going to be secrets. But again, it's the continuing effort to try and make sure that everybody's on the same page. Anything you need to modify, now's the time to talk about it.
Excuse me, on your January 31st date?
Yes.
Isn't that when it's all due, though?
Yeah, it's good, yeah, exactly.
100%?
But again, this process is gonna still continue. The fact that the design development is gonna be submitted
Yep,
doesn't mean that the discussion is gonna stop at that point.
okay, okay,
That's gonna continue,
okay.
because there'll be things that'll be going in the design development submission that will not be finalized. As an example, when you get to site work, there'll probably be a budget for playground equipment. There'll probably be a budget for planting based on the information that they have, but then the nitty-gritty and the actual layouts can all be done during the next phase as we go through that process. So there'll be a lot of those things that can still be worked on, which is standard protocol, because again, like I say, there's an awful lot of individual decisions to be made. So the basic overall philosophical approach will be put together.
Yeah. No.
But the individual nitty-gritty items, there'll be pockets of sufficient dollars to be able to take care of and tweak the rest of those items. Whether they be site, whether they be materials.
I was just curious on the 31st, I just want to make sure.
So really, what we're pulling together is giving it a budget so that everything can go out for the costing.
Yeah,
And meet
and again,
this-
if you look at it, a simplistic explanation of where we are. We actually were at about, call it roughly, to make it easy, we're at 20% when you get approval for funding. We are now gonna be submitting something that's more representative of 40%. We will be doing the same thing at 60% working documents, and we'll be doing it again at 90%. So after we go through this whole exercise and this costing and budgeting, we do it again at 60%. We do it again at 90%. Why? That's because the design is gonna be continuing to be tweaked. You wanna make sure you're within the budget, and the way you do that is you get it updated, you do another cost analysis. You get it updated, and you do another cost analysis. When you talk about the phases of 20, 40, 60, and 90%, that's a little bit simplistic, because there's a blur between the phases. You know, when Kyle bills you 25% of the DD phase, when we submit this design development at the end of January, some of those items are gonna be 60% complete. I mean, some of the items that don't need any more input, the structural, the steel, the actual design, that's actually gonna be moving along well. That, when you open the documents and look at some of those things, or look at the HVAC layouts, some of those will be more advanced. Some will be a little less advanced. Those that are a little less advanced will have pockets of money to be able to depend on to make sure we can cover the bases. So it's a fairly straightforward process that allows for the tweaking and the continuation of input while we monitor very carefully the budget. And as we move along, there'll be items that we will look at and say, well, these are things that can be considered for value engineering, things that you might want to consider taking out in case we run into any budgetary issues. Hopefully that's not the case. But you always want to be prepared to have those things available so you can look at them and make sure that this whole ship is going in the right direction, is going to have the input that the committee and the town wants, and is going to be within the budget. That's the goal. We want to keep this thing moving ahead. We want to safeguard against any embellishments that might jeopardize the budget. And again, some of those things we'll be able to accommodate, and some of those things will be like the Grinch that stole Christmas and say, look, some of those things we just won't be able to accommodate. But the framework has been submitted. The framework has been approved by MSBA. The budget's been approved by them. Our job as a team, and everybody in this room is the team, is to keep this whole thing within the confines of the schedule and the budget. I think we're right on course.
Can you just clarify for me the difference, if there is any, a typical site development project that comes before the town, the site work package, the DD package, is typically, for all practical purposes, done. And that allows the reviewing authority to do what they need to do in their process. So when I hear DD 100%, I've got my hat on thinking, these documents are going to be pretty well done. Can you clarify for me what you guys are meaning by 100% DD for site?
Well, again, the design development, as it's related to this submission, the design development packet, which includes site, building, and the whole shoot match, and
Right.
specs and specifications. If you look at it as going from 0 to 100% ready for construction, we're at 40%.
I understand. But typically in the process, the site is at this stage of the game, while the building is at 40, the site is way down the track as part of the review process with planning board and technical review agents.
Yeah. Well, again, every one of the projects that, again, like I said, these school projects, when they're pulling together the site,
Yeah.
the utility package, remember, the engineers are all working on the sewer, the water emanating, coming out of the building, the distribution. So a lot of that building, I mean, when I say site, we're talking about building excavation, we're talking about gravel under the slab, we're talking about all of those things that are occurring under the building and all coming from the building to be tied into all of the utilities. So
Yeah.
it's an evolutionary process. The site guys don't work and say, let's finish the site. We're 100% with the site, but we're only 40% done with the building. It all kind of works together. It kind of evolves along.
I guess I understand that, but I'm just not at all clear on what you guys mean then by 100% DD in these documents that are submitted.
Our contract defines what design development is, Rob. If, for site, if
Yeah.
you wanna bear with me,
Yeah,
there's
please.
5 key elements.
Thank you.
Existing and proposed contours and locations of proposed building in addition, showing entry level elevations and key exterior grades at perimeter, indicate all retaining walls, indicate benchmarks of site survey if available. 2, all utilities, existing and proposed, indicated location, elevation, composition, and size. For example, manholes, sewers, hydrants, light standards. Include work by others, gas and electric utilities. 3, roads, laid out parking areas, walks, recreation areas, terraces, and site improvements.
That could change though, right?
Well, this is our contract.
Right,
That's
but
what
I'm
we
just
have
saying-
to do to satisfy MSBA.
He's
This
reading
is
from
MSBA.
MSBA's
That,
contract.
that defines
Hold on, though.
design
That's what they
development.
want. Yeah.
4, building location, fixed and reference. And 5, plant materials and preliminary schedule.
It's
Where did-
general statement though.
Yeah.
When there's any
Well-
changes, what happens?
Well, this doesn't,
Changes
You know,
not to the
define-
contract, but changes to the design, yes, the design evolves.
right.
Carl, so,
Used with committees and commissions,
Yeah,
et
that's,
cetera, et cetera.
sure.
so when you were reading that, was it, that was design development?
Design development submission requirements.
Okay, so that's basically grading, drainage, utilities, lighting, planting, roads. I mean, it's,
Yep.
right, it's the shebang.
Septic.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's what I'm talking about. So that's what the submission on the 31st will we'll
Well,
have
the
all
submission
of
actually
that
happens
information.
after we get the cost estimate in.
Right.
We wanna
Well, I
wait,
mean the
Yeah.
31st, that
Yeah.
it goes to the
deadline.
cost estimators, then
Yeah.
we don't wanna submit anything until we're sure that
Yeah.
we're in the budget.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
is like, middle of February.
Okay, well, that's my understanding too of what would be for this stage of the process, okay.
Good.
But just a further clarification, that gets submitted, let's assume that for a moment, there's a continuing discussion with the planning board consultants or whatever, and planting changes a little bit or what have you. We pick that all up in the 60%
Oh, yeah.
submission. So those changes are gonna evolve, whatever you need.
There will be,
that'll
and there
get-
will be
that'll-
changes.
There will be.
Absolutely.
And that'll be stirred into the equation for the next submission, which occurs
Right.
at 60%. So again, like I said, there's gonna be time for these boards to obviously chime in. Even though this is being submitted, there's a full acknowledgement that there'll be other things happening and other suggestions that are gonna be made and other tweaking that has to happen. And that's gonna all happen as the normal process continues.
Well,
And
our
we-
goal would be, Pat, not to have any changes after the fact.
Oh,
That's why
absolutely,
we wanna
yeah.
do it now.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
That's our goal with the planning board.
In the perfect world, that's what you always shoot for.
Right,
In
and
the
our-
real
and our-
world,
Our goal
We'll make
in
some
working
adjustments.
with you all and in working with
Yeah.
the town planner and others, as early as possible, is so that when we do make those formal submissions to the boards, we're not gonna have changes, that we're
Right.
gonna be, in compliance with, their guidelines, regulations, expectations, so forth.
Hi, I'm just curious about the process on, all these meetings, there's lots of feedback that's shared, there's lots of good ideas that are brought forward. What's the process for determining what makes it into the final design? How do we know that the feedback is that's being recommended is worked in?
The planning board will give the approval of the
Right,
site
so
approval.
That's
Does
what
it
it's
come to this committee?
Yes.
Like, so you know, and I know the minutes describe what some of the feedback was. I'm just trying to close that loop because, people are giving the time to share their thoughts and input. I just wanna know that it's being referenced and referred to and included in the plan as much as possible.
I think one of the things you're gonna hear tonight is that the whole idea of having these Thursday meetings with the groups and so forth, it's consolidated, there's minutes, and then it's brought to this committee to say, this is what we've been talking about, these are some of the items that have been requested, we think these are good ideas, and Kyle will go through these with Courtney. And again, that's the whole process, and that's why it's been working out, because you meet on Thursday, send the minutes out, people have a chance to look at them, you sit here, you go through them all, and you can have a chance to go back and forth and listen to what has been requested and how it's being stirred into the equation.
Right. And Carol, we'll be voting on each of these topics.
Carol?
So if there's something that can't be done, DRA is gonna have to come back and let us know, or if there's a cost issue with it.
Right.
Or something
Well,
like
I
that.
see the stuff, I see the discussion reflected, I'm just not sure what makes it to the list, that makes it to the plan. That's all I'm interested in. So let's say something was really important to faculty and staff.
Yep.
But it wasn't necessarily as important maybe to the architects or whatever, it didn't make it in. So I'm just trying to connect the dots, that's all.
Then if you see something that
Yeah.
didn't seem as important, you need to let us know.
Okay.
Because we don't wanna
Carol,
pay extra for the changes are big money.
Yeah, no,
That's-
no, I mean, we want, obviously, we're working
No, we
on
want,
the budget, but-
we want to make sure everyone's well represented.
Yeah.
Carol, I can
Unless
only
it's a
speak for
cheaper cost.
myself, but I'm assuming that there's going to be a round of these drawings that come in, that we will be seeing, that we just talked about. And we're gonna be commenting on those, and you're gonna see them again. And then there'll be one more round to incorporate if there are changes because of that before this is done.
Yeah,
In
will,
terms of
like,
the
before
in
meeting,
terms of the
before it goes to
100% DD.
MSBA,
And
Will this group do exactly what you're talking about, Rob?
I
Have
sure
a
hope
chance to
so.
Look at all of the
I sure hope so.
changes and things that, are going into the final submission, so there's enough time to discuss it.
Well,
I mean,
that's
it's
a
a
good.
very aggressive timeline, I'm not complaining about that, I just wanna make sure that it's not so aggressive that we don't really have time to fully vet the things that really need to be represented.
Well,
Courtney is-
Courtney is going to be keeping notes, has been keeping
She's
notes.
doing a great job
Right,
with that.
so as she forwards those to us and we forward them to you, it's not just you, it's everyone's job to review these
Right.
notes. And so if you see something that you feel doesn't stand out, or that you'd like to see have more importance, that's the time to bring it up to
Yeah,
the committee.
I mean, these notes are great, Courtney, she got everything. The thing is, there were a lot of ideas shared, right? There were a lot of, but I don't know, at the end of the day, what was determined to be an idea that actually is gonna make it to the next step. Like just the security or the technology. Carl and his crew made some suggestions, and the security people made some suggestions, the technology guy made some suggestions, and the staff made some suggestions. But I just wanna make sure I understand what's gonna make it into the.
Well, they're gonna come to us and then we vote for it, right?
Yeah.
Which,
This is the time, I guess, where I wanted to just flush this out a little bit more, Carol. As far as I can think of, so there's the technical agents review, there's planning board, there is the site, and I'm now thinking of site and some of these issues with playground that you're talking about, subcommittee, and there are the other subcommittees. And then there's the building committee, and then there's the school committee that has to cast a vote also, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think the school committee has to vote on this. This is
No,
a town-
no vote, no vote
No,
needed for
but
that?
They should get
Okay.
regular updates, but they
Okay,
don't have any voting.
okay. Well, what is, okay, so they don't have to vote, but is their input important?
You're the representative, I guess,
You
Rob.
decide.
Well, so then I go back to what I was saying, so the school committee is another group that needs to be incorporated. And so there, and then I see there's a planting plan, a lighting plan, an emergency access way, the Johnson property, grading and drainage, utilities, layout, materials, and we have yet to see any of those drawings. And I'm concerned that there's going to be enough time to get all those drawings in front of all of these different groups, and I think that's that's a whole bunch of boards, and it's already, whatever, the 8th, and to get their comments, to get the site subcommittee to see it once, and then we're gonna have, I'm hoping having an opportunity to see it a second time.
If I may, I want to put your minds at ease a
Please.
little bit. When we talk about things here and we record them, they're getting incorporated in the project. It shouldn't rely on your review of our documents, months from now, weeks, to make sure that they did. You do have an OPM, you do have a commissioning agent who's going to review some of those technical things. If we agree, like we did last week, that we're going to have hand dryers in the boys and girls rooms, you don't have to check our drawings a month from now. Try and look in those specs and see.
I wasn't
the specs
going
are
to.
this thick, the drawings are this thick, to see, now, are the hand dryers in there? We're going to get the hand dryers in there,
Yeah.
and that's why they're recorded in the minutes. If there's something that's, a question, we're going to bring it in front of you and say, this was our recommendation, but there was some thoughts about doing it differently, and we're going to hash it out here. We work for you. We're going to be responsive to you, ultimately. We get input from a lot of sources, but once we decide something, it's in the project.
Yeah.
If we miss it, and there will be a few of those, I can't say we're perfect, but we try hard. We do have a commissioning agent, as I said, we do have OPM review, who are going to, and our own internal quality control on our documents, to make sure these things are well coordinated and resolved. But,
We do periodic
I mean, it's wonderful that you have Rob, who has technical expertise, and he can look at our drawings and say, yeah, the slope on that is, 3 to 1, that's okay, But if we agree that slopes are gonna be 3 and 1, they're 3 and 1. You don't have to wait till you see the drawings, and, the planning board's gonna look at it, and their expert's gonna look at it, that's fine. But we don't need to unnecessarily lengthen the process to wait for
no.
document review.
I totally appreciate that. But at the same time, the drawings in the end are what matters. And just wanting to make sure for all of us that, that what we're talking about is addressed. And just with regards to site, it's a package that we haven't seen yet. And I did talk with Jeff Wade a little bit about this on the phone, and he couldn't be at this meeting tonight, but he said it was all right for me to share also that he has some concerns about the level of what's been shown to date and the schedule of 100% DD. And basically, to get everybody to review these drawings, and to still have time to modify them to get to this 100% DD date of January 31st, is just a real big question mark.
Yeah, you brought that up to me too. Do you expect the planning board to make a decision by the 31st?
No?
No.
All right.
No.
I was getting a little
That's why
nervous.
we just said this.
Yeah,
We've been
no.
working in anticipation that we're gonna be fine. There may be a few wrinkles they throw at us
Yeah.
that result in some changes.
Okay.
But we're expecting that what we're, and our engineers are developing is consistent with their guidelines.
Okay, good.
So Carl and Courtney, let me ask you, so last Thursday, you had meetings all day long. You did technology, security, site. So you've met with a number of people, a number of departments, a number of our members as well. Based on the information that you've received from them and everybody else, I mean, how do you feel about getting us to this January 30th date?
I'm
I mean, with all
comfortable.
of, I mean.
We made a lot of good progress the last
Were there
week.
things thrown, I mean, I know we're gonna go through them, we're gonna go through each one very shortly. But, you're the ones that were sitting there through the meetings, you sat with Rob, going through site and stuff like, understanding the changes. I mean, is there anything that was thrown out to you that?
There were very
just-
few changes, actually.
Okay.
There were more confirming earlier design decisions and the direction that things were headed.
Okay.
I'm comfortable
All
that
right,
we
and I know
made
from
good
Jeff's
progress and
standpoint
will
too,
continue to.
we're meeting with you on Thursday on the interior and exterior materials.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, I do understand that during the schematic, we did do some preliminary review as
Mm-hmm.
a committee. And he was worried, that because we're just meeting with you on Thursday, about the timing and getting that in as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I mean, and now I also understand, so we have the 22nd, and we could potentially put in a meeting on the 29th if we needed to, right? Because those are kind of our catch-all meetings, that for
Right,
anything
right.
that's not resolved today and next Tuesday,
Yeah.
that we have 2 more weeks of meetings that we can continue to see these things.
Yeah, and the actual submission, like we said, is not happening till like February
End of
20th.
Right, it's going to cost,
We're gonna have
it's
some
going to cost
serious
estimators
meetings,
on the 30th.
I
After
anticipate
that.
in February, because we'll have the budgets then,
Right.
or cost information back, and we may have to make some choices.
Okay.
So, and that's when we'll really be reviewing the packages that go in, to be submitted.
To the
It's the
MSBA.
middle of February.
Right.
In that February schedule, when do you get back all of the information for pricing where, within that range of that schedule?
It's like February 15th, 18th,
So there's
something
like
like
a, there's
that.
like a
Yeah, we're
5
gonna
day,
get- we'll get ours
another
back.
5 days after that?
In a week and a half, we'll have it back from our guys, and we'll be going through it with our outside estimator. Once we go through it and we're satisfied with what we see, then what we do
It's
is
like
we
a
have
week
to.
later.
We have
that
a-
We have to, we
submit.
sit down and we have a reconciliation meeting between both estimators and both teams to take a look at what's in there and reconcile quantities. So it's a very comprehensive review. Each one of these submissions has 2 estimators, 2 teams, and then sitting down and reconciling, and then looking at where we are on the budget and coming up with some options and alternatives and so forth as it goes forward, I think for some, one of the things that's a concern is when you look and say, you've used the term, 100% DDs, when you break it down and realize that what we're really submitting is a 40% packet to MSBA with time to finish and make adjustments as we go forward. I think if you look at it as the site has to be done by the 31st of January, that's not the case. There's
Well,
there'll be a continuing input and evolution as we go forward,
Well, maybe I misunderstood then, but I thought when Carl read what was due for 100% DD, that in fact, that's not 40% at all.
Well,
That's more like 80%.
But again, it's going to evolve. It's going to evolve so that the final 100% packet will be done when we're ready to go to bid. So there can be
I
modification right
understand
up to that point.
I understand that, but
Rob, the 40%
Just the-
reflects the entire.
I
The
know,
entire
I
project,
know.
yeah.
I understand that, but the site, you were saying the site is also part of that 40, and what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say is that, as Carl went through, the site is gonna actually be closer to 100% done. It's gonna
Well,
be in the 80 to 90%.
There won't be details.
Yeah, there won't be
There won't
details,
be,
yeah.
certain calculations or schedules, some of those things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's still
but-
the
there's a lot of
allowances for
preliminaries.
playground equipment and things like that, site improvement things,
But that's,
Specifications won't be
that's,
100%.
but that,
Yeah.
it's gonna be more like 80% done.
Well, as I said, that 40%, some of the things will be 60 and 80%, some will be further behind that. So again, some of them will be further advanced, and the more information they can put on paper, the better off.
I think site will be 100% done when planning board approves.
Yeah,
Issues its order of conditions, and any modification from that will have to go back to planning
We don't
board.
wanna do that.
Right.
Well, I'd like to go back to something Carol said. What, in your eyes, is the difference between someone making a suggestion, because a suggestion is just an idea, versus someone saying something that you feel needs to be reacted to? I guess, I mean, I'm a little concerned about what you were thinking about when you made that comment.
Well, I think the perception sometimes has been in the process, you know, that there's already a design and a preconceived idea, and that is what is being recommended, and sometimes when people don't agree with it, they don't necessarily feel heard. So I'm not saying we should do what everybody wants, because we have experts that obviously, you know, have a level of expertise, but I want people to feel heard. I want to figure out ways that I want to be sure that whatever gets designed is going to be feeling comfortable to the people who are going to live there all the time. You know, sometimes when things are designed, they may not be necessarily understood in the same way by the people who are going to live there. And so it's just been a frustrating feeling for some people that they have not felt that the process has been one in which their feedback or their ideas have been considered. Now, I haven't seen that, I haven't seen the final stuff. That's why I said I reserve judgment on what ultimately gets decided, right? But I'm just, it's a process thing for me. I just want to be sure that if we're designing a school and the people that are going to, the constituency groups that are being represented feel strongly or feel that something should be considered, that is at least acknowledged in some way. If it's too expensive, that's fine. That's a good excuse for not doing it. But I just want the process to be a true process where people feel like they're giving their time because they're truly interested and that their suggestions and feedback are being considered. Not necessarily everything's going to be done. I'm not saying that. Just saying, and it may be just people's perceptions, and it may be unfounded in Carl's eyes, you know, because I know how hard they work to try to, you know, get this project, keep it on track. But I'm just saying that's the perception. So that's, yeah, there's a filter there. And it's obviously coming up because you picked up on it. I want to be sure the process is such that people are comfortable with the process. That it's not that feeling that things are just kind of being, you know, run by people, but people's feedback is really not important because what's going to be designed is already designed.
Dave?
First of all, you've had multiple meetings with all of the constituency, right? I mean, multiple
Met with a lot
meetings.
of people
And people are already passing judgment before they see the finished product.
because we
Is that
don't
what
know
you're
what's
saying?
in the finished
Well,
product.
then let
That's
them
the
slow
point.
down and that'll all be exposed. Second question is, and I would assume that you're doing this, is that you're ranking and rating all of these suggestions on some type of importance level versus, you know, smaller level or a larger level or a major issue or a minor issue or some type of ranking system. Like hand dryers in the bathroom aren't as big as maybe, you know, what do we do for the gym floor or what do we put on the roof or, you know, so I'm sure that, like Carl says, all of those things are getting in there. They need to slow down a little bit and let them present what they have so far. Maybe everybody's suggestions are in there. You already have people feeling like they haven't been heard already?
And frankly, some of the suggestions can't be done. I
Right, well, yeah,
get
well,
that.
That's the other
Honest.
thing, yeah.
But, and so I'm not suggesting that that is the case. You
Okay.
asked me my opinion, I'm just
Alright.
sharing with you how it feels to some people that are part of the process. I just want the process to be pure, that's all. Ultimately, I know we're gonna have a great product. I know that we're all gonna, you know, figure out the best way to do this. It's a very aggressive timeline, David. When people meet and then they never hear anything back, that's what causes anxiety. That's what causes anxiety. So all I'm trying to do is identify how does the process work so that we can double back to make sure, and again, everything that people want isn't gonna be, we talked to the technology guy. You know, we'd love a lot of things that aren't gonna probably be allowable in the budget. You get
But
that.
I don't think people can expect us to just keep coming back and reassure them that, you know, yeah, your idea's there, no, your idea's not there. But you can, you know,
I'll take
as
care of my end of the day.
administrators,
You
I mean,
asked my opinion, I'm just sharing with you
Yeah.
what the process was and why I said what I said earlier.
yeah.
Okay?
No, and that's fine,
I
and
believe in
we,
the project, you guys get to make the decision, I don't, it's not my school. You know, it's not Carol Jacobs' school and I get everything I want, or the teachers get everything they want, or the administration gets everything they want. I just want it to be a fair process, that's all.
well, again, as we said, keep your eye out. If you're not seeing something you you have in your head, let us know,
Well, I'm
but,
interested to see what ultimately
Yeah.
is designed.
but I,
I was there for all the feedback, so I know.
Right, well, I think we're gonna.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I think we
Yes.
ought to address these now, because there are some things that, they're not design questions, they're programming questions,
Yeah,
that maybe, you know, we've misled you to think that there's still opportunity to change the program. But we issued some minutes, I think, right before Christmas, based on the last series of meetings. And there were some questions like, I think it was the first grade teachers asked for toilet rooms in their rooms like kindergarten rooms. That's a program change we can't make
No.
at this point in
No.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we
And
should
they
be,
know that.
we should be clear
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
right,
Okay,
yeah.
that's one.
yeah.
They ask for doors directly from their classrooms to the outside.
Yeah, you can't do that.
We should talk about that if you want. That is a design issue, but we talked about it during schematics. We don't recommend that. But then it's somewhat a cost issue, but it's much more than that. It's security, it's operational,
Right.
cleanliness, environmental, energy.
And it's probably not even possible because of the topography. Because as I was listening, Courtney was there for that discussion, and you know, but remember what the time when it was being discussed was right after Newtown, and those teachers are worried about how do they get out of their room, what's the second egress. Right now, those teachers have access to an outside
I
door.
just want to be clear that
Yeah.
if we want to have the discussion, we should have it right now.
Right,
But
'cause-
our recommendation is not to have it, so we can, so it's not lingering. I don't want people to have expectations of seeing something that is not there.
But that's my point,
Okay.
is that
That's the
there
way it
needs
was
to be
written
a-
in the notes, Carol, so that's why we're trying to be clear in the
Okay.
notes
All right.
of those points
All right.
that were suggestions or requests that
We,
are not being incorporated in the project.
those were
Those need to be
highlighted in,
communicated
those were
And they were
highlighted
highlighted in red in the notes.
Right, so somebody needs
There
to,
was a request
make it.
for
Communicate
another
that.
space in the building
So, and that
called,
was with the staff.
called a
That was the meeting with the
solarium
staff.
that would expand, you know, if we were to add it to the program, would expand the square footage of the building, would change the program. And obviously, as you know, the program was fixed many months ago. We don't have that ability to add to the building.
But that wasn't the suggestion. That, for that particular thing, it wasn't the suggestion.
I think that you've been doing a good job, though. I mean, you can handle me and Rob over there. I mean, you're doing all right.
And we mentioned,
I want to go on record saying, I'm not saying they're not doing a good job.
I
I'm just saying
understand.
that I want to make sure that the process is a process where it's
right, and that's
authentic,
what
all.
I'm
Right.
hoping
I
to try to
think-
clarify some of these things so they're not lingering in people's expectations.
Well, I think what I have to do is I have to read, I'll have to take the notes and I'll have to make sure that we
Okay.
found a way to get them out to staff. Because there does need to be a closing of that loop. And
Carol?
if it's me that has to do it, I'll do it.
Carol, I can't, as a school committee member, I can't speak to the building components that you guys have been talking about, and I would leave that, I guess, up to Jeff, who's got a good handle of the building, but I can't speak to him. But anything to do with site, I can assure you that I'm not gonna be voting on it until I hear what you guys think.
Mhm.
I just wanna let you know that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, I don't want to belabor the point. I
What
made
else?
my point.
Are there
Thank
other
you for
things that you
listening.
want
Well, another item on that meeting that does definitely need follow-up, Carol, is about the SPED program and the assignment of rooms and labels. I know we were all sort of under handicapped there when we had to make that submission to the Department of
We were way
Education.
under handicapped. Yeah.
But, you know, there wasn't a director at that time and
Right.
so forth. And we're bringing together 3 schools, you know.
Mhm.
So that definitely needs some attention. Hopefully it's mainly about labels on rooms and it's not gonna change the configuration
What's the
too much.
process call
But
for
We
getting
should,
that
we should have a
as well?
meeting, you
Okay.
know,
Get it?
probably us and yourself and the
Sped director.
SPED director
Okay.
first.
Okay.
And then as you see fit after that with the
Okay.
individual instructors.
Will you need a resubmission
So-
to DESE?
We
That's
might.
what we would
I-
have.
Yeah,
I-
might,
They don't
but-
move that fast, you know?
Yeah,
Right.
I said to the sped director, I said, I really, let's talk about it, because
Yeah.
if it really is just a changing of the labels, that's fine. But if it is a reorganization, we will have to go back to DESE,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's gonna be a problem.
So you're better off finding out now
That's right.
than later.
Yeah.
Was there anything else?
No, the others that I think we've taken care of, and again, they're in the minutes. So I think we're fine in that regard in terms of
Then I
what's
think,
been decided and
I
what's been
think
incorporated.
you should very quickly tell people, because I happened to be at the meeting when we discussed this, that it came up about the doors leading out of the rooms. And I think it would be good to share to the committee your views on having individual doorways leading in and out of the classroom and what the practices currently are with other buildings?
Well, there's a couple of aspects to it. One is security. That's one of the most important ones nowadays, and we didn't even bring it up with the security people because it happened at two different times there on that day. But most security people, obviously, they try to count up quickly how many points of entry and access are there around the building, and those are all points that have to be protected or guarded or locked or monitored or things like that. So generally, the fewer of those, the better from their point of view. And less chances of somebody leaving it unlocked or leaving it ajar or
someone knocking on a
breaking
door
in.
and pointing at a kid and saying, open
Yes,
it?
could you open it for
Happens
me?
all the time.
Kid,
Why
open
did they want
So-
it? Why did they suggest that?
It's safe
For
security.
well, both for security, for quick egress out of the
Oh, I
room,
see.
and for
What you say.
access, to a playground or
Oh,
mainly to a playground,
Yeah.
direct from their class.
Well, I think we should discuss more security. I saw the minutes there, and I think you're planning on doing that today.
Yes.
We were
Yep.
going to
Yeah.
recap that.
Yeah.
That would be critical.
But I thought, since I know that this was a big issue with some of the teachers, that we ought to just put it out in the open as
Right.
to why, why or why not
Absolutely.
having doors
So
out.
that's the first, maybe most important. Secondly, from an energy point of view, it's actually in the code now that any entrance that's used by a certain number of people actually should have an airlock, a vestibule, a double set of doors. Now, a individual classroom wouldn't meet that threshold for the number of people, but still the principle is the same, that, in the cold New England weather, you don't want to go directly from inside to outside, and all that hot air, all that cold air is coming into your classroom. You want to have an airlock. And then from a cleanliness point of view too, if kids are coming in directly, you need a walk-off mat, and nowadays you need 15, 16 feet of walk-off mat to really be effective. Kids aren't trained to stand in one spot anymore and wipe their feet and then come in. So, people recognize that. So from a cleanliness point of view, you don't want to track in mud and dirt and rain and snow too directly into a classroom generally. So, and again, and a cost issue. Doors and locks and hardware are expensive. So adding 40 of them or something to the job, and we have about 40 ground floor rooms, it would, be something. But that's sort of last on the list as to why. So that's generally our recommendations. And we've done a lot of elementary schools, and in the last 20 years, I think we've done it once or twice, and in those cases, we did have vestibules that were shared by two classrooms. They'd come together and then go directly outside. But other than that, we haven't been doing this for a number of years.
The only place we've ever done it is kindergartens. Kindergarten teachers like to be able to walk out, but quite frankly, with the security issues today, that's kind of going by the board.
Yeah,
You're
that's
trying to
it.
minimize the number of entry points.
Mhm.
Because as I said at one of the meetings, you're gonna have all these lockdown provisions.
Right.
Very few schools are not. There's someone who's ingenious and has diabolical means and desires. Is not going to be able to get into a school. You get, like you just said, whether you knock on a door or you wait for someone to walk out. So the more of these points you have, the more security issues you have.
What's the lockdown procedure if you're sending kids out the doors and into the field? What do they do then? They just stand there?
Well, we could get into that if you want to.
I
We
don't
do
know.
have
what-
something
Yeah.
designed, George,
Be good.
to address, and again, I think we reached consensus on how the school will be operated in terms of monitoring and locking and that sort of thing. There's a lot of details still to come, but general concepts of, for the most part, the school, all the doors can remain locked all day long. And only during morning arrival time do you unlock the bus entrance door and the main entrance door for students to be able to get in.
Are these
So-
solid doors? Is there a window on the door?
No, these are glass doors. The main entrance door here and the bus entrance door are the only doors that would be normally unlocked during arrival times, so that students could flow in. They'd be monitored by having staff there to oversee that, as people get out of their cars and or off the buses. So during that, whatever it is, might be a half-hour period of the day.
Yeah.
After that point in time, all the doors can be locked, and teachers have access through either a fob or a card key or not a key punch, but, you know, a
A
card
card,
swipe,
yeah.
or sometimes just proximity, which is even more convenient. So teachers can come and go, and particularly, you know, in this layout, remember the parking sort of here and here at the ends of the building. We envision the teachers entering the ends of the buildings. Those doors would be normally locked all day long, but teachers could come in there with their card swipe, so they can get in those ways. And also the receiving area back here too. There's a few spaces here. The kitchen staff, custodial staff would have the same thing, a card access, the doors stay locked. So that's how the building would function. And as we said, after morning arrival, all the doors would be locked. Visitors would be directed to the front because that's where the visitor parking is. They would enter here right by the office. The only way they get in the building is by getting buzzed in. There's an intercom with a camera, even though you can visually see the person as well. We like having both.
No, I was talking more if there was a door in every classroom.
Right.
What's the lockdown procedures if
The
you
kids
just
run out
you
where
send
they're
them out, and
going.
then what do they do next? You know, they.
There is no lockdown procedure, because they're all outside. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the teachers came up with an idea about putting doors on every classroom. What is their idea once they send the kids out in the playground area? What are they supposed to do? I mean, Salem can say, "Oh, there they are."
Right.
I mean, they're supposed to go hide behind a
No,
tree.
they would choose a location for the kids to meet. I mean, they
Right.
would develop classroom
Policies like
procedures.
that, same as fire drills.
They
They
would.
have
You're right.
policies as to where to
Yeah.
meet outside the school generally.
Yeah.
I thought,
But-
with looking through your
More
notes
exposed
there
than
about
that.
security, that, did you consider alarms to the glass? That if the glass was broken, that it would trigger an alarm sound?
Not directly, Tilly, but what we did decide is that, first of all, for all of the ground floor windows and glass, we would strengthen those windows so that they're not just ordinary glass, but they're laminated tempered glass.
Mm-hmm.
So they're, one, more difficult to break, and they have that inner layer of plastic.
Uh-huh.
And at the main entrance doors, they'd be strengthened even further. Not quite to bulletproof level, that's a little bit
Yeah.
expensive and very thick and heavy, and but there is a grade of even further hardening those entrances, so to speak.
Yeah.
But we still recommend, and the police and others agree, it still makes sense for those to be glass. You still want to have visual access, you still want the school to be warm and inviting and friendly in that regard, but the
Sure.
glass also gives you security from a supervision point of view. But to help with security, in addition to strengthening the glass,
Mm.
the greeting area where there'd be a counter for the secretaries at the main office, that counter would actually be strengthened with an inner layer of Kevlar
Uh-huh.
to act as a shield.
Uh-huh.
And behind it, there would be a panic button. Not an alarm, not an automatic alarm. There are other fire alarms and other things in the building, obviously, and other intrusion detection, but so that the desk itself can be strengthened. We agree that's another.
Well, we used to have it in the town hall. We used to have an alarm system, much like a bank,
Mhm.
that you could press it on the floor, an alarm.
Right.
What's the
it's
panic
that kind of
alarm
thing.
do? Does it go to
Goes to
the
the
police?
police. Yep, directly.
Directly
So
to the
same thing,
police.
yeah.
Directly to the police,
Yeah.
without dialing,
Yeah,
911 or anything.
I
So-
noticed you had a lot of cameras that you were.
Yep.
Cameras to me are useless. I mean, who cares after it's
The
done?
police, the police care,
No, the police do.
the
They're gonna be
administration
monitoring.
cares.
Yeah, but it's not a preventive.
No, it's for, it is
But
in
it is
some
because
ways,
they
because
allow,
people
they can see
know.
who's coming in the building.
Right.
But people know that there are cameras, it's a deterrent in that regard. But it is for after the fact, being able to go back generally. But there's also other uses of camera
Vandals,
too.
yeah.
If there were an event,
Police
in
can monitor,
action.
immediately jump on
monitor
the
it.
system and look at all the cameras.
So
immediately.
somebody's going to be sitting there looking at cameras?
No,
No,
don't
but
say
they're-
that. If
You
there's
don't
an
have to,
incident,
but you have that ability.
right,
You can from any computer screen with the right passcode.
there'll be
You
protocols for
can look
that.
at it.
Also helps in vandalism. I mean, it records, you have a recording, it re-records
Right.
itself. So if you have vandalism or something, you can go back and see exactly what happened,
How many cameras are there? I thought there was
There's-
quite
there's
a lot.
There's a
It
lot.
takes a lot.
Yeah, I
Just
just
look
thought,
at this room. How
wow.
many cameras does it take to film a meeting? It's the same sort of thing. You need sort of multiple angles.
Yeah.
So right now we're planning on, I think it's 15 exterior cameras and like 30 something interior cameras, just to monitor the hallways, the main entrances, the stairwells, the gym and cafeteria.
Right.
Because the gym and cafeteria are rented out after hours, and it's a way to sort of monitor those spaces too.
My daughter-in-law is in New Hampshire, and she was told, she's a teacher, she was told the first thing to do pull the shades. No,
We have shades.
I just thought, you're gonna take time to go pulling shades? I
That's
mean,
the
you got
first
windows
thing.
all
part
over.
of
That's one of the
That's what they
first
do now.
protocols.
That's what they do
Is that
now.
right?
Yeah, turn off
Yeah.
the lights, shut the
cameras.
shades,
Get-
and move the
move the
kids
shades.
into a area where they can't be seen.
Right.
That's where they'll go to bed.
So,
Carl, can you,
That
in the
takes
interest of
time.
time, let him go through the
Right.
whole thing and, because there's a
Right,
lot
so-
more to it.
These are all sort of things we presented. Most of them were in our original budget, and were agreed upon by the, I don't know what the official name of this group is, if it has a name of security committee for the town, in
Subgroup,
addition to the
whatever.
administration. The other thing we want to do inside the building is be able to, segregate and isolate certain areas. So, we talked about when the gym is used, like tonight, if there's a basketball game over there at Pembroke, and the rest of the building wants to be closed off, we can do that. We've got doors positioned in such a way. Likewise, if there's an event in the cafeteria in the center of the building, whether you enter this way or this way from the parking lot, we can isolate the classroom areas on all floors and segregate that so the public isn't, wandering through the building. So we have those doors. We decided that those doors as well could be remotely operated so that in an event, and I use that word because it's a euphemism for something bad happening, if there were an event happening, you could remotely close and lock those doors to isolate the classroom wings. So that's one step up that we did add there. So the building can be nicely operated. Remember too that we have men's and women's room over here, so if there was something in just the gym, like a basketball game, you could literally have access to those toilet rooms in the gym and nothing else in the whole school. And close after that. So that, from a vandalism point of view or maintenance point of view, you're really making it very easy, convenient to operate. We talked a great deal about within the classrooms and lockdown and how that works and so forth. And there's a lot of very expensive solutions at one end of the spectrum. There's some more reasonable ones. What we came up with for the typical classroom doors, what we agreed on would be all classroom doors are lockable. That's certainly in our normal scope. But they now have locks that are sort of double keyed, so that you can lock it not only to keep someone out, from the corridor, but if you were inside the classroom in an event and wanted to have a lockdown condition to keep anyone else from getting in, you can lock it from inside the classroom with a different key. A separate sort of more secure key that only works in your classroom, and therefore no intruder can get into the classroom. And that would be the same for doors between classrooms as well, intercommunicating doors.
Even if they had a key, they wouldn't be able to get in because you're locking
Right.
it with a different key on the inside.
Right.
Which gets into that lockdown situation. You lock yourself in, you get the kids away from the sight line, and everybody's safe behind the,
Right.
behind the
The classroom
walls.
doors have windows?
The classroom doors are solid. Next to them there are windows called side lights. They're fairly small, and like Pat described, they're positioned in such a way that you can they're mainly there for safety. So if you're walking up to open the door, you can see if someone's on the other side. You don't whack them with the door. But they're also there if the teacher's got the door closed and the principal or somebody's walking down the hall and just wants to peek in without disturbing the class. You don't have to open the door to see what's going on. You can always observe the class. But they're fairly narrow, and so they're positioned in such a way you don't get distractions of kids walking by in the corridors, distracting the class. And you do have safe areas within the classroom where if you were out in the corridor, you can't see, the entire classroom. The kids could be herded into a corner safely away from that.
Carl, we didn't talk about it, but in those side lights,
Mhm.
is there a way to design the glass, or is the glass designed in such a way that it's not easily breakable?
It has to be laminated safety glass because it's next to a door anyways.
Okay.
So it is in that
Okay,
same category.
okay.
Yeah. And generally on those doors too, we don't put, on those side lights, we don't put shades just because you sort of defeat the purpose of, being able to look in. Some teachers end up plastering, you'll see them with papers or they want privacy.
But Carl, just mention that the teachers wear the key around their neck.
Yes, so it's always available.
It's always
to
with
them.
them.
That's the recommendation.
Yeah.
So they don't have to run to their pocketbook in a locked closet or something to get it and go lock the door.
So it's part of their
Yeah.
normal tools for the
Right.
day.
One of the little secrets too that they say, to get teachers in the habit of doing that, you make that same key open the teacher's, washroom. So they can't go to the bathroom without that key, so they learn to
There
carry
you
it
go.
around their
Oh,
neck.
they gotta
keep
be
it with
trained.
them.
Yeah.
So that's the basic, day-to-day operation of the building in terms of keying and hardware. As we said, some doors will be remotely operated, those classroom wings and the main entrances and the receiving all can be, just these two can be remotely unlocked. So the secretary, can buzz you in. And then once you come into the vestibule, you get buzzed in again into the office area. Likewise, at the back here, there is an after-school program. Not every child gets dismissed at whatever it is, 2:50 or every day. Some stay to 4 or 5, 6 at night, and their parents have to come pick them up. What the school does now is not very safe. They leave the front door open so the parent can come in and find the kid, halfway down the building in the library. We want to be able to keep the school locked.
That's changing.
And so we can use that same locking system here, so the parent can come pick up the child who's in the cafeteria, and the teacher can remotely unlock it, or walk to the door and open it and let the parent in. So that's sort of the operation. The back door, which again is often a vulnerable spot, is normally locked. If somebody shows up for delivery, there's an intercom there with a camera. It can be programmed in a variety of ways. Generally, it's programmed to go to the kitchen office first. Most of the deliveries are for the kitchen. But if nobody answers, if she's busy or operating and doesn't hear something, it can go to the main office, or it can go to the custodian's office. It can be programmed, to cycle through that progression, and then someone has to physically go there and unlock the door to allow the delivery into the school. So. At relatively low cost, you get, very reasonable and appropriate level of security through the hardware system. But then there's another layer of cameras we talked about, mostly for deterrence or after the fact kind of investigation. And there'll be a series of them around the school and within the school. One of the things we did decide, after a little bit of deliberate, this is a very big site, a very long road, a lot of trees, a lot of topography. We agreed that it would probably be way beyond the means of this budget to try to monitor the site with cameras. We'd have to quadruple the number of cameras in order to cover the site. They did ask for one camera near the entrance drive, just so again, if something happened on a Sunday night, you might be able to see what car went in there at that time. So we'll investigate that. But even that, that's a long way from the school. It's a long way to run power and a fiber optic line to get to a camera out there. But we'll investigate that at this stage and see what the cost is. So that's what we agreed upon in terms of the site access. One of the other things I should mention in terms of when we met with the police that they requested or asked to be considered is perhaps a gate to keep cars out during certain times of like weekends or I'm not sure.
On the driveway?
On the driveway.
That's
and it's
school
really
issues.
impractical.
They wanted a gate.
We can't imagine.
He wanted a
Right.
guardhouse.
A guardhouse, perhaps with a gate. We can't
They
imagine
were
how
thinking
that
about
would work.
if you ever go to Whittier Tech.
It's more high school.
Yeah,
drive
Whittier,
there,
yeah.
the guy meets you,
Right.
out his little house and
Yeah.
meets you and then lets.
So, the idea being, I guess you wouldn't even let a visitor get close to the school before you've already screened them. But it's hard to imagine how that would work in this situation here.
I have a question. It just popped into my head. I've never asked you before. Are there speed bumps
Not in
roads?
not in our recommendations. I mean, partly the curves
Curvy
slow you
enough?
down. Speed bumps are, Peter's
I know you don't like speed bumps. I know.
gnashing his teeth over there, thinking
Yeah.
about plowing them.
I know he is.
Um,
I was just curious.
So-
And I know it's not a high school.
yeah, we're talking about parents,
Completely
not
different.
Yeah, and
students
none of the
driving.
parents go fast up that road.
No, I know. None of the parents drive fast. So that's not why I asked the question.
Right.
Well, the paper
We did
said-
talk with, as we say, police and fire too about how to surveil the site, and you can drive around the building. You know, so the expectation would be on weekends that they do that they don't just drive in front of the building, but they can drive around it. There'd be, you know, specially designed curbs that are mountable, but they discourage ordinary vehicles to do it. So, you know, there could be gates there, but that's a real pain, because then the policeman's got to get out of his car, open the gate, close it behind him, and then drive around. And he probably won't do that if that's what's required. So we, you know, recommend these mountable curbs. And then obviously a fire engine can drive around too in the event. Although, you know, most all fires are going to be fought from the front. But if they ever did have to get back here, they can drive around here too. It's a drivable surface. We talked a little bit about the emergency access drive too in that regard. And, you know, the consensus is that if we have it, it should be able to be plowed, it should be able to be maintained in order to be an emergency access drive. So we're working on a design that allows that, but also sort of minimizes the amount of pavement there, because, as we've always pointed out, you know, it's a very narrow piece of land. There's very little opportunity to pick up the drainage that would come off pavement, and it's, you know, it is just for emergencies. That would have a gate top and
That
bottom.
would be costly. You're considering paving part of it?
Yes.
Yeah, we
That's
have
a
to be
lot
able,
of-
We're putting a water line in there anyway.
You have to
So
be
we're
able to
already-
get-
You have to.
you have
We're already
to.
doing
You have to do
excavating.
something.
You have to be able to get
But we
emergency
have-
vehicles up that
Doesn't,
road.
doesn't the policeman, the police chief have, they have the vehicles to go in the forest.
I understand that.
Yeah, but you know what, Tilly, you need to be
Those
able
aren't
to
on
get
patrol
vehicles
all the
out of
time.
the site. If something happened on the other end and you had to
You wanna be able
have
to get an
the
ambulance up
vehicles
there.
out,
Right.
yeah.
They don't plow the water department road off Ballpate Road. I mean, they do plow it, and that's accessible by vehicles. Mohawk Circle, that's not paved.
It's ground up hot top on it. It's a lot better than it used to be.
That's what we were talking about, is
Yeah.
Right.
Peter was
We're
Not like
trying to
paved
come up
like a
with a
road.
solution
Right.
to use it for an emergency only, and we were talking about recycled, ground up,
Reclaimed, yeah, might be.
reclaimed,
Weren't you
to
talking
keep the
about
cost
needing to
down.
have drainage?
We're
for
talking how
that?
much money,
You're gonna have to.
this is
We
really,
have-
It-
we have
but that's
a-
already-
We've done it.
It's already in there.
We've already done, it's
We've already-
already put it all in there.
Right.
Yeah.
I would never
What we
support
did
this
before-
project unless that road
Before
was
was an
there.
allowance. Now
What
we're
I
trying to
mean
design
is-
something and get it
Right.
priced and compare it with that allowance.
well, when you
So-
do the asphalt, the trouble is that you're going to add not only the asphalt
Drainage,
expense, the drainage.
But if you keep the
And you're
size
gonna
down,
have-
We're
there's
trying to keep it down.
ways to,
Rob had some suggestions that
ways
we're
to do that.
pursuing. Remember too, that the option is that this can be a pedestrian access to the school too, for the kids
Sure.
that live here. So having a little bit of pavement in that sense is nice, so that they can actually use it. They won't be walking in leaves and mud and things.
How wide
so-
is it, Carl?
Well,
How wide is the
25
driveway?
feet more or
the
less.
driveway, what needs to be accessible is probably 12 feet
12
wide
feet.
Yeah.
in that regard, but we're hoping to do pavement less than that and compact the earth so it supports a vehicle within that 12-foot section, but have pavement that may only be 4 or 5 feet wide. So if we get clever,
Plow it, you'd have.
and you minimize the drainage then, because now we're only considering water coming off that 4 or 5 feet of pavement.
Mhm.
And if we have swales and good, you know, backfill material that's drainable, it might
It's
work.
already wet though, even without the pavement.
It's not that bad there. on
No,
this
we had a
walkway.
drought.
Well, yeah, I mean, the wetland areas are further away. From
But in those 100-year storms, she's not kidding, they
Well,
get
it's
a
shaped
lake.
like a bowl right now.
There's
They get a
lot of
lake
water.
on the main road.
It flows all the way down to Elm Street.
In the end, an engineer's gonna have to put his stamp on that.
He sure will.
And it will be designed to take into account drainage, and hopefully, as Carl's talking about, what is paved and what you see is gonna look more like the width of a walk, but it still is gonna have to support a fire vehicle getting up there.
Yeah.
And it'll have to be engineered as such.
And they're also doing Elm Street.
That's kind of technology.
I'm assuming Elm Street has got to be looking at drainage issues also.
Yep.
So there'll be the
Definitely.
combination of things.
We haven't done anything yet.
Excuse me.
A couple other things on security. We talked about access control, programming. The fire department obviously always has access to the building through what's called Knox boxes on the outside where the keys, master keys are kept. They can get in. There'll be a whole keying meeting that happens probably in detail, actually during the construction phase, when you talk about master, grandmaster, submaster, who has keys to what level. It's all very doable. It just takes a lot of time to go through it. We have specialists who will spend the time to do that with the administration and principals and teachers and so forth, so that all that will be taken care of. In terms of vandalism and intrusion detection too, in addition to sort of hardening the building and as we talked about, there will be door contacts on all exterior doors, so you can tell if the door's ajar, not just, you know, whether it's locked or not, but I mean physically open if somebody props it open. You can monitor that. There was discussion about actually making that part of the building management system, so it actually sends an alarm, so you don't have to actually be there, you know, looking at the monitor to know whether a door is ajar. If some door is left open for more than its, you know, standard time, and that can be set, you know, an alarm goes to someone to respond. So we're looking into that.
Which is another reason why we would discourage putting doors in all the kindergarten rooms to the exterior, because, you know, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if someone should get in, even through that, beyond that, there are motion detectors that set off alarms in the corridors too. So if somebody were trying to break in, steal a computer, and walking down the corridor, an alarm's going to go off, a motion detector alarm. That can be, again, tied to whatever monitoring system. It could be the police station, it could be a private monitoring security company if the school department wants to go that way. And then, as we talked, video surveillance. And then sort of overlapping with the technology part of this is about the phone system. We'll talk about technology in a minute, but right now the plan is to have a phone in every room, and that phone can make outgoing calls, it can receive incoming calls, it can be programmed a lot of different ways. You can limit it so you can't make long distance calls from the classroom. But it also would allow what's called an enhanced 911 system. So if someone did make a 911 call from a classroom, it shows up in the police monitor, not only is the Pembroke School, but what room the call is being made from. So every phone has an address, and they know, you know, immediately who's called and where that person is.
Carl, if I might interject, we had a lot of discussion around this issue.
Yes.
And we had Red Kelly was there, and we had the consultants, from the technology side.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about a phone on every desk right now, but don't forget this project's 3 years away. And, you know, see this little thing right here? Maybe there's a possibility where we go wireless and through a lead that's inside each classroom that actually hooks into either the instrument that the teacher's using, whether it's a laptop, whether it's iPad, or even a dummy cell phone that's in the room. So it may not be your traditional phone that sits there that dials.
This
It may
is one
be
of those
some
discussions-
hybrid, because technology is obviously going to change, and it's changing rapidly now.
Yeah, this is one of the discussions where, at this point in time, for the building, we have to decide what goes in the infrastructure. We do have time down the road to pick out, you know, furniture and equipment, and phone, the instrument itself, is part of that equipment. So as David said, we could choose maybe, you know, when it comes to that time, in a year from now, year and a half from now, we start thinking about, you know, what computers are we going to provide for these students and teachers? Maybe it's a computer that also acts as a phone, where we don't have to buy a separate phone.
It's about the data drops. It's about the
Right,
Cat
so
6E
we're
to
still
put in
going to
there.
put in the number of data
Right.
drops that would allow us to have a phone, a teacher phone in every classroom.
We may not necessarily have
We make those decisions.
a VoIP system, voice over IP system. Might be a little
Yeah.
different.
That's another thing that helps in postponing some of this stuff to equipment, is that for certain equipment, you can buy it off a state bid list.
Yeah.
So if you like a certain brand computer or a certain kind of phone, you can, because those prices have been sort of shopped already competitively, they're listed on a state bid list, you can buy,
Right off
you
the-
know, what is it, Avia phones or Polycom phones?
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
Yeah,
There's all
if
kinds
that's
of,
the kind you
I mean,
want.
But we get to decide that collectively
Yes.
as
yeah,
a
when we
group.
get there,
And the
we'll get
software.
Red in the room and we'll get the consultant. And boy, you know, they talk over your head. It's like they're talking about these devices.
Again, this is an area where the
Yeah.
school department's gonna have a lot of
Huge-
input.
right.
Right,
You know,
Yeah,
what
right.
the
kind of
teachers are gonna
computers
wanna
do you
be in
want
on
your
this
teachers to
discussion
have?
because it's really
You want
getting,
every teacher to have a laptop versus
it's
a
really getting way out
desktop.
there.
Well, the
Oh, I know.
cable, you're going to have a cable line to the.
That's right, that's part of the
But that's
infrastructure,
part
so
of
we agreed on that, regardless of whether
cable.
we have a phone or not, we agreed we'd
Right.
provide the drop for the phone.
So you can use a data drop, a Cat 6E data drop for phone service. You can
Right.
use it for
Right, you can call
internet.
iPads
You can
now.
use it for
Right.
That's the
multitude
phone
of
right
things.
there.
So whatever device we plug in, we're gonna have to decide that down the road. And there may be much bigger, better technology than your
Related to
regular
this discussion,
VoIP phone.
there was a thought, well, you know,
So
everybody's got a
quick.
cell phone nowadays, why do we need to give teachers a phone, they can use their cell phone, and we said, well, what if you have to call 911? You can call 911 from your cell phone, I don't know if you ever tried it, if you do, you
Goes
get
to
the
state
state
police.
police.
Right,
You don't
You
get,
don't get downtown.
right,
Ellie's got firsthand, right?
right,
um,
right. When I
from
got hit by that
accidents.
motorcycle and I called,
Yeah,
explained the story, and they said, okay, we'll transfer you to Georgetown.
sure.
So then they called Georgetown, and I had to explain the whole story all over again. So it's very
So
time
that
consuming.
enhanced 911 I talked about doesn't work for cell phones, at least right now.
No.
And plus, you know, you're in this little bit of awkwardness where you're telling your teachers, you know, you have to rely on your own personal device for safety. Are you going to provide it? Are you
No,
who's
yeah,
going to monitor
it's
it?
not too
Who's
good.
gonna
And are they always gonna have it
maintain
charged?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
can get it from
right.
home or somewhere,
So
yeah.
to address that, one of the options that we're going to include at this time for pricing is to have a panic button
Yeah,
in
panic
every
button in each
classroom.
room.
Now,
But the cable budget is supposed to
again,
take
we're not
care
so
of the
sure about
schools.
that, but that's the
do you mean
recommendation.
cable?
The
right
money
now.
that you get from cable is supposed to provide the schools
Yeah, but
with.
that may provide the internet drop, but beyond that, they don't provide all the equipment.
Well, they did here.
They
In
pay.
town hall maybe.
But
What
this
did they
is
do
in
at the
a
high school
school.
and
And well, that's the one thing that I recall when I was a selectman. We kept pushing it, but at the time, the school was
Well,
not
Red did
interested.
say he was going to have a.
You
We
should
should
still
be
push
talking
it.
with
You should still
Comcast.
push it.
Yeah, but
But
you
a lot
want to
of
push it
towns
before
do
it
get
gets
those kind of
built.
concessions out of cable.
No, it's not that. Again,
What?
as long as the lines are there, whatever the technology is, when we're ready, then we push. We don't
But-
push now because we could be
But
pushing
the
for old
school
technology.
system, what's
As long as the
lacking-
lines are there and the hookup is there to the internet, then we're good.
What's lacking in Georgetown schools though is the fiber optic
Yeah.
connections into the school, both here and at the high school.
Don't you want
You
that
know,
while the
you want-
building is
Verizon
going up?
building.
Yeah,
Them
we're
to bring
talking
it down
about
the
that.
driveway.
Yeah.
Right.
Because right now, it's not in our project to run fiber optics all the way to Elm
I thought you were
Street.
talking about the individual headsets and. lines and
No,
all
I'm
that.
talking about the fiber optics.
Yeah.
It should be considered now while you,
We're gonna put in empty conduit.
Right, we're
as
talking with
part
them.
of our.
oh, I see,
You know, from the last pole, which is like about here.
yeah.
You know, right now, if all the power data phone comes overhead, we're gonna drop it down underground, come underground into the building. And we'll have extra empty conduits in there. So
Yeah.
if they ever do get around to it, they can pull fiber through there.
Right.
But we're not including
We're gonna go
fiber
after that.
as part of
That's
this
part of
project.
it.
Yeah, and the Comcast and the other one, what's the other one?
Verizon.
Verizon.
Verizon, that's part, it should have been part of their contract. They provide X amount of dollars for anything needed, not only headsets or
Right. Well,
cameras or whatever.
We discussed this and we're sure that they're going to want to be able to put that into the school.
Yeah,
We'll work on it.
yeah.
That's part of the discussion.
So I think that's a summary of the security systems in the building that are proposed, and all those are in the budget right now. We'll see where the pricing comes in. As I said, there were a few things added from what we had considered earlier in the schematic design, but that's the reason for doing the pricing now.
So the panic buttons and all that stuff, so that, sorry, Chuck.
That's okay.
You know, so you'll come back and we have X amount of money right now budgeted for security and it's gonna come back at X amount, and if it's over, we can make a decision whether we wanna go with it, and that's at the point that we will
Right.
decide on that.
Right,
Okay,
in February.
yep, on that. Yeah, I mean, everything else, like I said, I mean, the windows, the tempered and laminated glass, that's probably a little bit more than what we had
Yep.
initially.
Yep.
Some of the surveillance, it looks like.
We had that many cameras before in the
With
schematic
the-
budget. Yep.
Okay.
Seems like a lot.
But then, so then, what we talked about,
Big school.
you know, where you have
Cameras quickly.
covering parking lots, driveway, and fields, right now, we're probably saying that's probably not gonna happen, is what you
Right.
said, right?
We wanted to document that it was requested.
Okay,
I guess if you want to officially, consider it, you can tell the police chief you considered it then, but it,
Okay,
like
but
we
s-
said, it really, when you think about all the trees,
okay,
and you can't put a camera up very high because you got to get under the branches to
Yeah.
try to monitor the site is
Okay.
virtually impossible.
so right now, all right, so at this point, we're saying or not to consider, because I want us just to take a vote to consider, okay.
You know how
Um,
they talked about a camera at the beginning of the driveway?
Yes.
Could you put a camera, like where it's like a bottleneck where it's all tight and then it spreads out to the parking lots? I mean, so like there's, where the existing fields are, yes. Like there's telephone poles there. Could you put a one camera there just so you could see the car
Right.
instead of at the end of the driveway?
I think that's what we do. We
Okay.
look to do it somewhere here that's convenient. Here, yeah.
Okay.
And
What do you
the other
look
thing
at a
too,
car?
unless
What
you
are you gonna
spend more money, you need a
To get
camera
the
that works in
license
low
plate
light.
if there was
So
damage
you
or
try to
something.
locate it where there's light, if
Yep.
you can. If that street, I don't know if that street light's on all the time, but there is a street light there,
Yep.
near there. So, but again, if you really want to be able to see a license plate, it may take two cameras. We have to get one down low, one up higher. So it's not as easy as it sounds sometimes.
Okay.
Use the height strips.
All right, so, if no one has any other questions about, the security, I guess I'd just like to take a vote from this committee, I guess
In
to,
support.
to support
Recommendations of
the recommendation of the
Security group.
security committee, the security group that had met, last week, coming up with these notes, knowing that, well, now I can't remember if it came from that group or if it was from the teachers, but we're not gonna go forward, we're gonna propose to not go forward with the exit doors coming out of all the classrooms in the first grade. We will not consider additional coverage of parking lots, driveway, and fields, except for possibly a camera at the beginning of the driveway or the middle of it. You'll look at a camera somewhere,
Right.
one or two along that way. And then the panic panel is something that you're gonna look at independently as potentially an
Yes,
alternative.
you should include that gatehouse and gates.
Oh, and we're not going
gatehouse
to, all right, so we're not
This one has holes in it, so that means it's more important.
I have two of
going
them.
to look at,
Are you saying that there's, because I think at one point there was discussion about a camera or cameras out overlooking the playground? Are we, is that
Oh,
in or out?
that is included.
That
Because
is,
that's
yeah.
part of the
that's
building.
part of the building.
That's
Yes, we were gonna have a camera aimed at, maybe, and it might take two, the playground's here so big. So
Yeah.
we could monitor the playgrounds, yeah,
Okay.
because that's part of the building, sorry. Thanks for clarifying.
It was, they had said the fields and the parking lots and,
Yeah,
This is your empties.
Okay. all right, so we're looking for a motion then to approve, as mentioned. Approve with all, with the comments. Chuck, did you get all that?
I'm trying to get it, what is exactly approving, and make sure I get it right.
The
Just
recommendation.
basically the-
Recommendation
the
of.
recommendation from
Security
these security
discussion notes.
discussion notes. Right now, we're just doing the security discussion notes, okay?
On page 2.
Yeah.
And three.
Yeah,
2 and 3.
two and three, okay. But we are not going to consider the request for additional coverage of video surveillance at parking lots, driveways, in the fields. We are not going to consider the gatehouse at the beginning of the driveway. DRA is gonna still look at a couple cameras somewhere along the driveway. And a potential alternate will be the discussion of a panic panel, whether it's in classrooms or something like that. That can be listed as a cost alternate.
No exterior doors.
Oh, no exterior doors coming out of the classrooms. Excuse me. The individual classrooms.
Where is that one?
I don't know where that one was.
We just added that from
That-
discussion.
That was in the discussion. I'm not exactly sure where it fell. I just threw it into security.
That's in the staff notes that were handed out separately.
Okay. Well, we'll add it here and we'll add it, because it is a security thing. And Carol can
Makes
add
sense.
it back to her staff notes when she.
Second.
Number
Thank you.
4 on page 2, glazing at the main entry and tinted windows on the first floor. Is that already in your plans to have, it's in your specs to have laminated glass on the first floor?
it wasn't originally,
So this could be an added cost that we may not be able to afford then?
could be.
When we go through the costing of this, we'll find out what it is.
That
Yeah.
we'll look at that,
Mhm.
highlight it.
Yeah, right now, we're basically gonna approve that we wanna go forward with this. In mid-February, when they come back with the costing, we may have to relook, and they're gonna come back and say, you were up, and we might have to revisit, but.
Like the Kevlar at the reception desk, things like that, that wasn't in there, so there'll be a cost associated to that, and we'll identify it.
That's why we have contingency.
Right.
Michelle, can I just ask, I'm just curious, in other schools that are designed, is it generally the case that there is not some kind of camera coverage, or even over part of the parking lot?
That's true, yeah, there are many
It's-
schools, they don't surveil the parking lots.
They don't,
Yeah.
okay.
There's, it's sort of, one of these things where there's, responsibility, there's liability, or I don't know how to say it exactly, but there's an expectation of safety when you provide a camera that some school districts don't wanna take on. If a teacher goes out there and something should happen to her in the parking lot, and she'll say, don't you have that on tape? You know, I thought you were protecting my car, and look at it, it's all keyed, or, so some school districts consciously avoid, doing that for, parking lot areas, and site areas for that reason.
Are they lighted? Are there going to be lights?
Oh, yeah,
on them?
yeah, they will be lighted much better than Pembroke is today. in that
That might
regard.
be a legal question to ask the town council about that.
I was just curious.
Because what if there's somebody go out there and have a belt or something in the car, and then they use that against them?
If you don't do it properly, you should not do it at all. And this comes from my industry, where years ago they were putting up cameras, but fake cameras that didn't work, just as a deterrent.
Not
You
supposed to do that
you
anymore
can't
either.
do that. If you can't put 20 cameras out in that parking lot to do it right, or 15 cameras, then don't do it at all.
At several $1,000s a piece, or one or
And power
2,000
drops
a
and
piece.
cable drops.
And that's
Right.
before the
It's
wiring
not that we
and
don't
everything.
care
Yeah.
about the teachers, it's just, it's going beyond the scope of what really needs to be.
And I have a feeling Carol's thinking more in terms of off hours more than on hours.
Right.
So you got a motion made by somebody to accept security
I did.
discussion notes.
And Dave seconded it.
With comments, as you've noted before.
Yep.
No to the police department, request about the site gate,
Yep.
okay? Agreed that there would be a possible extra cost to number 4 for the glazing of the main entry, but at this point, we're keeping it into the project.
Yep.
Right? That we would be pricing an alternate for general note number 2 on the second page of that.
Yep.
Which was the panic panel.
Yep.
And that there would be no exterior doors from the classrooms.
Right.
Those are the notes I
Right.
have.
Also,
And-
increasing the glazing on all the exterior windows to a laminate glass.
I thought we had that.
That was the money
Is that
noted.
it? Yeah.
Number 4.
First floor, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
First floor,
First
yeah.
floor.
And then the Kevlar at the,
Yep.
accessory.
No guard shack either, right?
Yeah,
You
he
had
said that.
You see that one?
And then no additional coverage of video in parking lots, driveway, and fields. That one's off. It's under video surveillance number 3.
Are you gonna look at the one camera out near the?
Yes.
Yes, he's gonna look at 1 or 2 cameras somewhere along the driveway.
Gotcha.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? No, motion carries. All right, so, site, we're good. All right, do you wanna go into technology since it was?
Sure.
You've kind of already talked about that a little bit,
I don't know.
Michelle, where's the bill?
I have.
You don't have that.
Mike, you do not have a copy of you do not have a hard copy of the updated DRA bill. We'll forward it to you, you'll have to print it out.
no, I haven't.
You had a second
Carl,
copy?
I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I gave him one. And Mike has one.
You have
Right.
it,
I,
okay.
it wasn't attached, but
Oh,
I sent
sorry.
it around,
Yeah.
that's all.
In terms of technology, we started off with the basic typical classroom first in terms of how that would be served from a data point of view, and agreed on a certain number of drops. I don't have the plan with me, but I think it's 6 drops per classroom, a couple of which are dedicated to the teacher, a couple and the remainder for the students. And this is in addition to having a wireless network in the building. And the wireless would actually be much denser than it actually needs to be to cover the whole building, so that we'd be sure that there's coverage everywhere, so there'd be potential for a wireless device in every classroom. One of the points that's still not 100% resolved is, for those of you who've been in classrooms recently, you've probably seen what's called interactive whiteboards. Smart boards is a brand name, Smart, S-M-A-R-T. They're basically, consist of a projector and a whiteboard, a marker board that you can use like with dry erase markers, but you can also use it as a computer screen. and you can use your finger as a cursor and that sort of thing, and kids can come up and interact with it. There's that level of technology has been around a while now. There's another level of technology where all the sort of magic is just in the projector itself, and you can use an ordinary whiteboard. That's called an interactive projector, as opposed to an interactive whiteboard. Because those are relatively new, the school doesn't have experience with them yet. And that's one of the notes about getting a demonstration model, trying to be put into Pembroke so that some teachers could use it and we could make a decision. Because this is one of those things that we probably do want to get into the base building contract if it's going to end up being just an interactive projector. Then we want to buy the marker boards, obviously, as part of the building. They're attached to the walls. It comes with the base building construction.
How
So
many,
we do want
So they would be part of the building, not with technology?
the interactive projectors would be part of technology, the actual
the
projector,
boards.
but the wiring
Yep.
would be part of the infrastructure.
Okay.
So
how many of the current smart boards are transferable right now?
there may be a couple that are, but I think the thought is, George, and we might want to turn off the TV camera, but that we buy all new ones for Pembroke and the existing ones go elsewhere in the district, because if you buy all new ones, they'll get reimbursed as part of the technology budget in the MSBA project.
Right.
If you were to move them over, you don't get any sort of contribution for that.
So-
And
so
the
do we-
chances are
do
they
we
may
have
not
places in the
integrate.
district that
The high
would
school.
be able
So
to?
the middle school and the high school,
Yeah.
yeah, Pembroke has the most smart boards out of
Yeah.
any of the schools right now. Pearlie actually has a few as well. So, I mean, they will all go up and move up to the middle school and the high school and help out those classrooms tremendously, so,
Right.
Did we budget for all new ones?
Yes.
yes.
Because
Well, I mean, right now, the budget is really a big allowance in that it's $1,200 per student for
Is there
computer
enough in-
technology. How you break that down is still to be determined.
Right.
But
If we
and
can- if we
making
can
an
afford
inventory
it.
of what you have is
If we
is
can
on the
get it.
horizon. That needs to be done at some point for furniture, chairs, files, cafeteria tables, library shelving. There may be some things that are reusable that we'll want to move over, but to be honest, you got to be a little bit discriminating in that regard, because it often doesn't work out as nicely as you would think. And if you've ever, like moved into a new house and you bring some of your old furniture mixed with new furniture, it doesn't quite look right, that sort of thing. With these marker boards, it may not be the same dimension as the new marker boards, and so you got a smart board, an old one right next to a new marker board, and they don't align, or there might be some issues that we'd want to consider all new, if we can afford it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about the old ones, because I think, hasn't GAF spent a lot of money?
Yes.
The
They will
GEF
not go to waste.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's definitely, Carol has confirmed, there's definitely a place in the school for every smart board that's at Pearlie and Pembroke.
And they would still need more.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's been GEF, it's been parents, it's been, there's been a
Yeah.
lot of donations for smart boards and.
And one of the things is too, we have more classrooms now than we did before, and we'd like to furnish as many as we can, not just regular classrooms, not just full-size classrooms, but we've also got, half-size classrooms for special ed and some smaller rooms. It'd be nice to have technology in all those spaces.
Yep.
Library, other places, so.
What's the difference in price with the interactive and the smart boards?
We believe the projector is actually cheaper than the interactive whiteboards, the current smart boards. So
We just,
That's-
actually, we're doing Maine at High School right now, and actually that job was all spec, it's under construction. Had interactive whiteboards, with the projectors. Midway through construction, they did a lot of research and found that they could save a lot of money and satisfy their technological needs. So we changed everything back to interactive projectors with a plain whiteboard. And saved quite a bit of money and satisfied their technological requirements, and that's a high school. So.
So who is working
So-
on getting that at Pembroke right now? Is somebody working on
Our,
that?
our consultant was going
Yeah.
to
Okay.
call a vendor to see, they've done this before in other schools, provided one demonstration
Yep.
model
Okay.
for a school
Is there a
contemplating.
school that either one of you have done that have these already that we could call up and ask them about them too?
Fairly.
They're fairly new, but it's also, it's really for the convenience of the teachers. You want them to experience it and I don't know that they would go somewhere else. You know, you really have to use it in the course of a day and, you know, get trained on it, you know, that sort of thing.
Right.
So,
So each room, would they have a TV set?
no, the computer could project video. You know, that's the cabling is so enhanced nowadays that, you know, the bandwidth isn't a problem, that you can project, you know, videos right, you know, through the teacher's computer, whichever kind of projector's in the room. So that's what would be used.
Wirelessly too.
Yeah, wireless is not quite as fast as wired connection, but yep.
Today, anyway.
Yeah, exactly, today. So that's sort of the data side of things in a typical classroom. There's obviously going to be a wired network through the whole school with a fiber optic backbone and networked into each classroom. It gives you a lot of flexibility in how, you know, data information is going to be exchanged, including video, including announcements, you know, phones. All these things can be run over the data network.
Is there a service for the school that handles things like grading and attendance? And
That's software you got to buy.
that's software, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Those are packages
It's
in.
part of the technology
Yeah.
budget that you'll end up buying.
Right. And you know, the servers, computer servers and routers and hubs and those things you need to run a network, those are all part of the
The
equipment.
technology.
That
The
$1,200 per student.
Right,
Okay.
right, that you buy later, but the cabling is part of the infrastructure, so that's why.
So do you have to choose your server before you choose your cabling, or
No,
it doesn't
It's
make a
universal
difference?
cable.
All right.
right,
And training come
So-
in with that?
yeah,
Cost of
Oh,
that?
yeah. You'll need a whole lot more to train the staff, you know, day to day, and, you know, what they're gonna use and the software and all that. But for the network and running the network, there'll be training provided to the, you know, key staff members in the administration.
Will police or fire radios be able to work throughout the building?
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta add or make sure, we have, what do they call, repeaters, I think,
Yeah.
About that.
within the building, so that both fire and police radios work
Forget it, we
inside the
Yeah, we
building.
did, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so those are in the budget here. Carrying on with communications, we touched on it earlier. David mentioned about, you know, should there be a phone in every classroom or not? That's still a decision that can be made, but we have decided to put in the data, you know, number of data drops, so you could have that phone in every classroom. And whether it's just a digital phone or whether it's an internet, you know, phone, can be decided later. There's an intercom system that's separate from the, you know, the data network, but it's tied together. So if a teacher were, you know, using a smart board or making a presentation, and an announcement was made, it would automatically, the announcement would take precedence over the local, you know, speakers being used for the video projection, and automatically. And the intercom system these days too, it's all computerized so that virtually any, if we have phones, or even computers, but anyone can make announcements from any classroom. It's not like the old days where there's a big console in the secretary's office with all these buttons to push and things, and a microphone. You don't need to do that anymore. You can make announcements, and you can make announcements to just, you know, these 5 rooms, or all these 25 rooms, or only the 3rd floor. You know, all that sort of flexibility is built in nowadays. Then another unique thing that has been in the budget, we want to point out that you might not have seen in classrooms previously, is an enhanced voice system for the teacher, who wears a wireless microphone, and there's speakers built into the ceiling, and therefore the teacher doesn't have to speak in her teacher voice and get sore throats very often, you know. And for the kids,
That's neat.
and for the kids who are sitting in the back row, they hear as well as the kids sitting in the front row. And it's especially important for younger kids. You know, research has shown that, you know, when kids are 5 or 6 years old, their hearing isn't fully developed yet. It's one of the reasons they get, you know, their earaches a lot and things like that. And so, you know, they tend to miss a lot of words if it's not loud enough or clear enough. So these voice enhancement things are wonderful. Pembroke actually has one right now, you know, because there's a hard of hearing student. But this system, you know, is for everyone. Um,
Oh, that sounds
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
because
it's-
the teacher has to wear something around
Yeah.
her,
So I had a
That's
around her neck,
wonderful.
and they place.
Is there an additional device for
vision.
people that are hearing, that have hearing issues, that, let's say the student does have hearing issues, is there an additional device for that particular student?
I don't think it's needed in the classroom. In the assembly spaces like the cafeteria and gym,
Yeah.
there is a different system there.
Okay.
It's like, you may see it now if you go into a theater.
Right.
If you're hard of hearing, it's, you know, it's part of ADA.
Right.
They have to provide this for you. That's a, what is it? Is it FM, I think? I forget. It's a radio frequency, I believe. But, yeah, you wear a little, you get a little receiver, and, you know, in those situations. But within the classroom, you don't need this. You know, it's serving everyone. And there's a microphone, you know, when, for the kids to speak into, in addition to, you know,
There
the
are
class.
hearing impaired students who have special hearing aids that
That
are
pick up
tuned
those
into the microphone, and I think they can just tune into
Mhm.
the frequency that the teacher would use.
Okay.
So they wouldn't require
If
the
they needed to be
additional,
louder.
right,
yeah,
so they
and
wouldn't
direct.
need the additional or
Right.
a separate microphone.
That's terrific.
It is. It's
It
really
a great
is.
value. Like I said, teachers appreciate it as much as the students.
Although I still like my teacher voice.
Will this be a breakdown of how much this costs, or if there
Nothing's
were
gonna
areas that
change
we
that.
had to cut?
Yep. We have this, it's already identified that way in the schematic budget, and it will be in the next budget too, Peter. And then in addition to that kind of sound system, in a couple areas like the cafeteria, the gymnasium, and the music rooms, there'll be another sound system, you know, more for theatrical and music sounds. These other classroom sounds are mainly for speaking voices, but they can handle the presentation too. So when you want to show a video, you know, that sound can come through those same speakers. But in those, you know, in the cafeteria, in gym, there'd be, you know, opportunities, wireless microphones, speakers built in with amplifiers and so forth, a more substantial kind of local sound system in those two spaces. With the ability too to have microphones, for instance, over the stage. So if you had a group of like first graders trying to sing and it's a big room and they can't sing very loud, you can have microphones hanging to enhance, you know, the sound to be broadcast into those speakers. So those are the sound systems that would be in the building. And in the music and band room too, there'd be provisions so that they could record sound too. If you want to record the music practice or the choir practice or something, chorus practice, you could do that. There'll be a clock system throughout the school. That's part of the technology
The clocks will
budget
work.
as well.
Tell the right time.
They are wired, not wireless, so you don't have to change batteries. They're hardwired, but they are on a master system, you know, so they're all at the same time, and they automatically reset for daylight savings time. You don't have to go around and do that.
Wow.
And we do recommend, you know, analog style clocks, you know, with a hand and second hand, not digital.
I think that's good.
Teachers seem to want that, especially for certain kinds of lessons and all. So that's the basic technology package, and I think as we've said, except for the decision about the type of projector, we've got good direction there. It's very consistent with what's already in the schematic budget that's being priced, and so I think we can move ahead there.
All right, all right, so there's nothing that jumped out that we don't have considered in our budget
Right.
out of technology?
Right.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions? Clinton? No? All right, so can we take a vote to support the information technology discussion notes from that group as discussed?
Second.
No further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that one goes. All right. And do you want to go on
To
to
the
site
site?
and
Yeah.
then we can?
The third area we talked about the last week was site, and there were a few areas that this was a continuing discussion from previous. And one area in particular that we first focused on, I think, yeah, it's the first one listed here, the bus loop area. This is the bus loop, remember? It's a one-way system this way. The buses queue up along here. The children enter the building between the gym and cafeteria at that secondary entrance. I don't know if I have is the other plan on here?
Yes.
I think it is. remember previously, we had talked about a play area here, the play structure, I mean, and the paved play area. Over here, there was some concern about, one, there's no grass area for kids to run around in, two, the disconnect that doesn't flow very well. You know, from here to there, kids really, you know, they don't spend the whole recess at one, they kind of go back and forth or take turns. So the resolution that was discussed and proposed is to locate both the play structure and paved play area adjacent to one another here in this area, so that activity is all linked together, and then it creates and frees up this area to be a grass, you know, I don't want to call it exactly a, you know, play area, but it's a grass area that kids could run around in, right off the kindergarten wing again. There. We need to take some, you know, precaution along the walk, because we do have a parking area here, you know, to screen that. We talked about possibly an earth form or a stone wall or something natural, that would be nice. In these areas too, we would, you know, still put fencing in, even though this driveway would have little to no traffic on it during the day. We still want to protect kids from, you know, running out into the road there. And so there would be fencing around these areas there, and it's still, you know, a defined path to get into the bus entrance. But it really is a paved area that allows it to be used kind of in a more free-flowing, easily supervised kind of arrangement there. We hold it off the building too, by the way, because you might remember these are slope roofs. We got water or snow kind of sloughing off the roof, so there'll be a drip zone kind of next to the building. So these are held off for safety reasons away from the building.
Any consideration given to that fencing and some type of natural product? Because I know if you're going to put chain link fence there, it's going to look like the one at Little's Hill.
Yeah, we
where the-
wouldn't recommend chain link.
It's just, yeah.
Here. If anything, it would be sort of a decorative black iron fence, you know, just low but vertical pickets, something like that perhaps.
Yeah.
But that's a detail that our site will develop. It will be on the plans.
Something
but I
that's going to
believe
hold
that's
up
what
better
they-
than just fencing it in.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't be chain link.
Okay.
There.
They're proposing it
They
for
won't
that,
be the shop.
where
Yeah.
it used
They
to
won't
be
be
the
like a
play
shop.
structure,
We'll
that
bring
area.
some.
No, it has
Yeah, I can see that.
it has a top rail.
Running for a ball.
Same thing, that will work.
Well, you don't want the spikes?
Yeah.
There'll be no pickets.
No spikes?
They're very
One of the things we did too, we sort of
That's
looked at the alignment of this bus drive, and it's kind of a compromise between, you know, wanting to get a little bit closer to the entrance and one giving a little bit more play area. So we've held it off. So if you look kind of at the line defined by the end of the building, that sort of defines that courtyard there, and the bus entrance road is kept outside of that. So that sort of ended up with a nice, you know, piece. You can see how wide the gym is. This is,
Yes.
you know, bigger than the gymnasium in terms of width there.
And that's where the playground equipment is all gonna be.
This is the playground equipment. This is just open paved play. There's a proposal in town, I don't know who started it,
Boy Scouts.
called Peaceful Playground. It's a system of markings, you know, like hopscotch, but a lot more varied and a lot more fun and diverse. And, you know, there's some, you know, like longer activities or maybe circle the whole thing and smaller ones. And but they're all pavement markings, so they're just painted on the surface.
No
And it
swing
can be
sets
done
for
by
the older kids?
Yeah,
that's down here. We'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
This is envisioned for the younger kids at this end. And exactly what kind of play structure or climbing structure these are, we'll go over. We're scheduling a meeting the 17th. We may actually have some examples at that time to share with Margaret, if you could join us, and Rob.
What's
the
the
17th?
On the 17th? What's that?
The Thursday.
So if we could do it, you know, I don't know, you know, like 4 o'clock maybe or something in the afternoon, that if you could join us, Rob, at that time. That would be a good time to revisit this plan.
Playground.
I'd
look
like
at
to
that playground
point
equipment.
something out. I don't know if I missed you saying it or not, but you are now saying that the surface area will not be the pervious.
No, we didn't make that decision
You
yet,
didn't make it,
here.
because that was a consideration that it
Right.
might not be.
We're still thinking it could be.
Oh, okay.
Pervious pavement there.
All right, because I thought, you were saying you
Where?
thought it might not be able to because of the thickness?
Oh, the cuts. And
Yeah, the depth of the
Yeah.
subbase needed for that. You know, we're doing some test pits in that area.
Okay.
We'll find out what the material is. We've got good drainage there and it lends itself and there's no rock in that area. You know,
All
we
right,
still have to
so,
hold
so
on to
that's
that.
still up in the air
Because
then?
if we don't do pervious pavement, we gotta pick up the water some other way. And
Okay,
it just sort of pushes the problem to some other part of the site. It doesn't go away. So
So,
So
what about
17 is
street,
the site.
street hockey? Can they
they could play on that.
They could play it on that?
Yep, yep.
It's fairly long.
Yeah. One of the other areas we talked about, this car loop here, a little bit different geometry. You'll notice a little bit more green area here and here versus what we had before. See, there's, you know, there. For a couple reasons. One, we're trying to screen the parking areas a little bit. So again, it'll be a nice experience, I think, as you come in here along this curving road and come up to the school. You certainly get a glimpse of it, you know, through here. There'd be some screening, you know, in these islands, but you'd certainly see the front of the building. Then you come around this big, you know, natural area here. We want to screen these parking areas a little bit. We even may have a little bit of a rock outcropping right there, but the teacher will have a path around it to get to their entrance there.
So that's gonna be no cut, or is it
No, it's
something
still
you-
pretty good cut here, but we're trying to minimize, that's another reason. This gives us a little bit more room to do some grading, some
I mean,
off-grading.
so it's gonna be graded, then planted? is what
Oh,
I'm saying.
yes, this green area, this will be cut, you know, the trees will be cleared.
Yeah, unlike the center area.
Unlike
that-
here,
that's
this
a-
is
that's
no
a
touch.
cut.
Yeah, this is no touch. So that's natural vegetation, natural topography in that area. Same as this, no touch. We don't go in there at all. That'll be fenced off from the first day of the job. No vehicles will be allowed in there.
How wide are the sidewalks?
It varies, I think, you know, Peter, in front of the school, obviously, it gets much wider. We got a big plaza in front here. Generally, these are, I think, in the vicinity of 8 feet right here at the drop-off, but elsewhere on the site, they'd be more like 6 feet. I don't have those exact dimensions right here.
And that path from the emergency entrance past the teacher's parking lot, that,
This one?
how wide is that?
This one's probably pretty minimal. That would be as narrow as we can get away with, like 4 feet probably. You know, that's what we're thinking. We're gonna try and get away with like a 4-foot piece of pavement up this path here to get into the school.
I'm just thinking the amount of time it's gonna take to get that school ready to be open after a snowstorm. You know, currently with the Pembroke School now, you know, we can go up there and do it in, say, like an hour, hour and a half, and I'm not sure about how long it takes for them to snow blow the sidewalks, but to snow blow those entrances from the emergency entrance through the teacher's parking
Well, I
lot.
don't know
that-
that you'd actually, I guess you wanna do this one because it, you know,
Yeah,
that's
and
the
if the kids
teacher's
are walking
path.
to school through
Right.
that path,
Mhm.
they're gonna need that done, and that whole pathway, and then all the other sidewalks in front of the school, it just,
It's a much
it would
bigger
be
building.
easier to, if you could make those wider so you could drive a truck on that to plow it, instead of snow blow it. You know, currently, at the high school, we start at the Verizon building and put a pickup truck on the sidewalk and go all the way back to the back parking lot, and it saves them a lot of time to do that. We're gonna do some stuff to Pearlie over the summer to make it easier to plow there, you know, to save time, because that parking lot, those parking lots are gonna take a lot of time to plow. And it's gonna be granite curbing throughout the parking lots?
Not throughout. You know, usually around these islands, it's slope granite there, but when a walkway abuts, you know, if that's what we end up doing, like here and certainly along here, then yes, it's vertical granite. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have more parking spaces than you're gonna use. I mean, you've got right up closer, those on the left of that plan.
Yeah,
How many
still-
You don't
parking-
even
still
have
wanna-
to use that.
Still
Just
wanna
to
plow
plow
it.
it.
Still wanna plow that.
Yeah, you do, but for an emergency or for a
Pickup truck
quick opening,
6 total.
How many do you need for a school that size? I know there's
That's a-
266.
That's a moving target. You know, on a day-to-day basis, there's only so many teachers and
No,
and
but
visitors, that's true.
I mean, when you
But
design a
for
building, there's
special
gonna be
events,
a number that you have to go by to, you know, how many parking spaces you need?
It varies. I mean, generally, if we're pushed, yeah, we'll look at just the normal occupancy of teachers and aides and staff, plus, you know, a certain percentage for visitors. And on this school, that number, I think, you know, would come out to somewhere like maybe 150 or something. I'm not positive.
So
But
we're going 100 over that.
because we've got
Because of the Elm Street.
parents,
Parent-teachers
Yeah,
nights,
you know, again,
functions.
if you just provide the minimum, you've only got a handful of visitor spaces. When parents come to pick up, there's no place for them to park. They've got to queue up.
Well, they're
Providing
going to
spaces
queue up.
where
They're not
parents
gonna.
can park.
They're not gonna get out of their car and walk and pick up their kid. They're
No,
gonna.
but they may park and the kid comes to the car.
I don't see that happening.
Sure.
I mean, have you been up there now? They all sit in the parking lot.
Mom, Dad, you know, I'm here.
It's a training, that could be a
They
training
can,
issue
I was just
too.
gonna say that.
Right, it's like herding cats, David.
But,
I mean-
but you've learned to herd them.
Training people to,
Listen,
follow a new procedures.
And plus, you know, we're
but yet everybody
counting-
knows
But you're
what they
right,
want
we're
at
counting these
Starbucks.
spaces, you know,
They've
way down
trained you.
here.
That's right.
Those are really for the fields.
Yeah, saying
You
can't
know,
be done, just saying it's like
Obviously,
herding
in the spring or you know, end of school, if you have graduation, you're gonna use them, but they're mainly here for the fields. Yeah, if you wanted to not plow those in the middle of winter, you'd probably get away with it.
Yeah,
But,
I would say
um,
that would be the way to do it, is to
Right.
close certain sections.
Right.
Not with like 6 foot wide.
But people use them.
I'll tell you,
People will
people-
use them.
People,
Right, right.
there's a lot of people
They
that park
plow
at that
through
school
the
every
snow
day.
with their feet.
On the end?
Just so you can.
You know,
I'm not worried
because,
about the emergency.
They
I'm
park
worried
everywhere.
about the path.
and even to close it would be quicker to plow.
The other area that is a little different than what we had before is this area back here.
You have one of
Um,
those that you,
Notice
choose up
we had
and-
this area as play, you can't quite see it, and this was the play structure
We don't
for the older kids.
snow blower on the sidewalk.
And there's still, you know, a drivable path around the building. What we've done, again, in consideration of the grading, we
Okay,
brought
these are
this
the-
in
these
a
are the
little
ones
bit
that-
more,
sidewalks.
and we moved the
That's what we have.
structured,
Yeah,
play
you don't-
structure,
you don't like them?
We don't. well,
on the outside, you might
18
say,
hours.
of that pavement area now.
The,
One, it
sidewalk.
gets it away from the classroom windows,
Yeah.
Uses a
so the
V-plow
noise
on the sidewalk.
Oh, no,
shouldn't be as
we
disruptive.
don't do this.
Two, it makes it closer to the trees. Remember when David Warner was here, our landscape architect? He talked about the style of this might be more in
Natural,
keeping
yeah.
with the trees. So, and two, this contour, if you can see it, you know, it actually follows the natural grade a little bit closer. So there won't be quite as much fill needed here as originally planned.
That's what
So-
the amphitheater was.
Yeah.
So now that's for the older kids?
This playground is for the older children.
But
So
you
Again,
s- you
there's
still
really
have-
no difference here, it's just pavement.
Yeah, you're
There'd
still
be a
having the
couple-
amphitheater
There'd be a
there,
couple
right?
of basketball
Yeah.
hoops
Yeah.
here, but the play structure is really what's for the older kids, and the play structure is for the younger kids. Otherwise, pavement is pavement, I mean,
So do they have grass?
no,
Yeah.
never did, never will. They had grass.
All they'd get is mud.
All I want is, they need grass to like run around.
They'll come
That's
over
what the
here.
field is for.
Come over here.
Margaret, are the kids gonna be able to go from there to over to the fields?
As we've said, it's about as far as it is today, you know, from the school to the field,
Yeah.
from the school.
Yeah, but they have, I mean, where they have that playground equipment at Pembroke right now,
Yeah.
they have grass. Like,
Sure.
they have grass that they can play on, so
That's
they don't
really
have
not
to go
grass.
over to the fields, so they can play on that grass. Is there any grass?
No.
Not lawn,
If
there's
there's-
nice woods here.
All right.
If there's a
But they're not
puddle of
going
water,
to
they're
play
gonna
in the
find
woods.
it.
Right, they're not gonna throw a ball at play
Can
Play
they go play on
soccer,
those
to throw football, it's over here.
But Carl,
What's that little spot in front,
yeah.
near the kindergarten area?
That's kindergarten area.
That's for the little kids to
You
run.
can't
What-
send them
what's the-
away.
All right, so,
That is grass.
That's a parking lot.
This is natural.
no, I know,
That's
so,
trees.
so that little part, so the kindergarten gets
This is
two,
kindergarten.
they get the grass and then the little play structure on the other side of kindergarten?
Them forever to do
And
that.
then
Yes.
and that.
But what's across
This
the?
is pretty small. This is just for little kids.
And that's all just kindergarten?
I mean, they can operate it the way they want. This is the kindergarten wing.
Right.
This is a very small area.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's a little bit bigger than this room, you know.
But Carl, what's the topography of the grass area on the other side of the bus route?
That's a
This
hill.
is a hill,
Yeah.
Oh, it's.
and this is wooded.
That's trees.
Yeah, that you can't see the line.
It's a
It's
legend.
not heavy.
That's not gonna be cut. That's gonna be a natural.
That's
It's not going to
natural.
be cut, but is also a consideration, do you remember when the landscaping architect was here, he had some designs in the woods?
Yes, that's more
So-
over here that he's talking about. Yeah,
Can there be any in that area?
this area?
Yes.
Well, this area is a mound. It's a hill
And there's a big drop off on the other side of the ledge.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
with ledge.
There is a drop off.
Again, this is the area
climbing?
for older kids. That's the amount of space they need. And as we said from the beginning, of the we're never going to get. You can see how large that is. You know, we're never going to get
Are
that
they gonna be able to
over
go,
here.
are they gonna be able to go
Carl,
there?
just remember, where's the current school right now? Where that
Right
there?
where that field
Okay,
is.
Okay.
That's where
And the
current
fields are over
school is.
here.
Plus, what about after-school use too, for the
So-
general public, for all the other, you know,
Right, so, and that'll at least be a
Baseball
year
team.
after, you know.
soccer
the-
leagues.
Yeah.
Right.
Little
Right, the
league.
first
That
year,
won't be
this will be being demolished during the summer and into
So
the
there's no
fall,
grass.
and planted in the spring.
On the other side of the.
Maybe
garage
you can
building.
play on it the
It
next
would
fall.
only be
Right.
mud.
May have to wait,
Yes,
Um,
George.
So that was one sort of revision there. The other minor one is just how trucks get in and out. They still can back into the service area and leave. There's a little bit of a.
Carl, I think George has a question.
Oh, sorry, George.
Yeah, can you go by, I don't know if this was addressed, but with the new roadways, could you detail the road widths in different areas?
I think we had a
And-
question on here.
And which pieces of road do not have curbing?
I can't spell that out myself, George. I know that the landscape architect could. I believe the idea is the main road coming in is 24 feet wide to this point.
And how mu, and
Because
does that
that's two-way.
Is there any curbing?
Right here, there's a sidewalk right on the road,
Okay.
so there's curbing there.
But without the sidewalk, there won't be curbing?
I don't believe so. I think it's gonna sheet into these drainage area, this drainage area here. And then there's a drainage area here now that flows into here that we're gonna keep.
Okay.
Um,
So there's there could be some flexibility on road width. If there's no curbing and there's some maybe stone shoulders, which would, yeah, they could greatly reduce cost in some of these. I mean, that's my concern, I thought it, that was gonna be discussed in the site discussion. I tried to make it.
Well, we had a long list, and you can see Rob's
Yeah, I
notes
saw.
might have been
Yeah.
attached. That's one of the questions that we're gonna have in a teleconference call with Rob, more specifically to try to identify, from this point around to here, it's one way, this bus loop is one way, what can we skinny that down to, what do we want to? It's kind of a balancing act, like we said, George. We just talked about parking, where people are gonna park, and you mentioned people like to park along the shoulders of the roads for special events. You don't wanna make the road too narrow, now you can't, now you got a safety issue.
I mean, I've seen some model LID developments that have those stone
Yeah.
shoulders to provide for the safety turns for emergency vehicles,
Yeah.
but their road widths are like 18 feet.
Yeah, we gotta be careful here too. There is a guardrail here because there's a steep off-grading down. So there's no opportunity to park along this road. And I believe all the way up here, the grading is gonna be so tight to the road. I don't know that we're gonna have much of a shoulder, along this road. As we get around here, the cut's gonna be wider.
Well, I'm saying is substituting 24 feet.
Oh, maybe
Yeah.
22 feet.
Have it 20 or 22 feet with stone
Yeah.
shoulders to
Yeah.
cut down on the cost of the.
Another
the
consideration is, the curving nature of the road too, which is a little bit of a safety issue. If it were straight, I think you can go a little narrow. When you get curves, sometimes people don't make the curves as nicely and stay in their lane. You gotta be careful.
Certainly on your one-way roads, you can
Yes.
lessen the width.
Yeah, we do wanna have the ability to allow cars to queue up here and allow another car to pass in front of the school at least, not way back here, but, so that there might be a defined pull-out lane, drop-off lane and a travel lane to
What about the bus route though? Is
that could get narrow too. They've got it at 22 right now because they were anticipating allowing parking on one side, away from the building, not on the building side.
so you don't have to have a curb on that side then.
Right, right.
So you can cut
Do the
down on
same
pavement
thing,
and just
make
put
it 20
stone.
foot stone.
Right.
The fire department.
Yeah, make sure
Yeah,
you
they
get a
want a
trucks
fire-
in there.
Concerned that
Yeah.
there'd be no parking along that route, along that building, they really want that to be a fire line.
What type of guardrail?
Probably a wood one. Natural, but, you know, heavy timber.
I don't think it's gonna last long.
You got bad drivers?
No, I know how wood, you know, we had, a wood type guardrail down by a church on Warren Street, and, it rotted, and it was pressure treated.
Really?
Yes, and, it's gonna get damaged, and it's gonna, you know, look at the wood guardrail at the high school now. I mean, this isn't so close to the building that it, you know, geez, you know, that galvanized guardrail looks terrible. I think galvanized will last a lot longer than the
Okay,
wood.
We'll bring that up.
Where will the snow go when he does plow?
In these islands here, probably, you know, this is gonna be pushed this way. You know, we did introduce, that's another thing, we introduced some islands here. I know Peter's gnashing his teeth again, but.
Are there trees in those islands?
This used to be, you know, wide open. That's the reason for the
That's-
islands, is to get some trees.
No, I
in
mean
there.
for the road. I understand the parking lot.
You better naturally.
Oh.
The whole road, where are you
Yeah.
gonna, where's he gonna put the snow?
Well, this is the only place there's a guardrail here, Tilly, so that snow is probably going on the inside here as
On your
well.
payroll.
But otherwise, you know, there's
Yeah.
room, you know, beyond the shoulders to
There's
pile
no-
the snow, because there's no walkways.
There's be no curbing around the islands, right? Will they-
Generally, it's slope granite, you know.
That won't last long either.
You can't have them, isn't that LID if you have them, just recessed?
Absolutely.
We plan for the drainage to go sort of this direction.
Have you seen the loader?
Here. Remember, the guardrails too, I mean, do protect, I mean, the curbs do protect cars and sidewalks too. So we want curbs
It's,
in
you
certain
know,
cities.
that little.
You know, we've got a sidewalk coming here, you know, all the way up to the school. So it crosses these islands here.
Carl, it sounds like we need to have some more conversation with the truck driver. He does the plowing, not necessarily him,
Does the
but-
schools, and he does an excellent job. And if there's 265 parking spots there now, there'll be 265 spots there in March. After it doesn't matter how much snow we get. But you know, the trees. I don't know what type of trees you're planning on planting, but there's branches, and the branches are going to get broken by plowing near those islands. And then any place, are there trees any place in those green areas that we're going to be pushing snow?
No, we specifically, you know, look at the planting here to be, you know, tolerant for that. I mean,
Grass, you mean grass and?
It's where the drainage is going, so it's mainly grasses that we're talking about. And the trees would be along the ends.
Yeah.
Here, that's what we envision.
I don't think the Concon will support anything that you're gonna push the snow into the wetlands.
I don't know if that's wetlands
No,
or.
these aren't wetlands.
Well, isn't that where Mrs. Johnson's house is down here?
Oh, that's way down here.
How far away is
Way
that
up.
line there that you got?
There's the 100-foot buffer right around there.
Yeah, there's a little bit right there, and there's a protection zone around it. We're not going anywhere near there.
I think there's a 100-foot buffer.
On the bottom, I would think that would be a buffer there
Oh,
too.
right here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so if you're gonna push the snow there, you
They're
can't do
beyond-
that.
They're beyond buffer.
we're not going that way.
Pushing the
Going
snow
in
there.
here.
Inside.
For the whole road, yeah, that's the
The
only
roadway
area.
is gonna be pushed that way,
Well,
but
the
it's,
roadway is
it's
on the
pushed
shoulder.
that way now.
Sure, that's a long way from the buffer though.
I'm worried more
That-
about the
that's-
parking lots than I am about.
250 feet from the wetland.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You know, obviously we're balancing issues here. It's the planning board who likes these things. It doesn't want to see sea of asphalt, unbroken, unshaded, you know. So that's why we've added those.
So is there a way to have fewer of them, so you accomplish that, but
This is
This,
sort
that's,
of
as,
minimal.
that's as few as you can get, and you need to remember that you know, this is a school for little kids. It was picked for in the woods, and the idea of introducing in a few key spots some landscaped islands to break up the sea of pavement for 365 days of the year. Every issue that Peter is talking about, I have a great deal of respect for, can be resolved. They can be
These slope
resolved.
granite curbs are set in concrete,
They all can be resolved.
so
I
they're
think
pretty durable. And they're
Is
slow,
there
so a
not
plow blade rides up them, you know.
They have a blank slate of pavement though, it's not, you know, a shopping mall.
I think a good thing would be to cut down on some of the parking, 265 spots, maybe bring it down to 200.
No,
How many spots are there now?
but there aren't
Sorry,
that many
no.
people there. This building is that much
Oh,
larger.
I know, but how many there now and
I
how
don't
many
know,
are
there's
at Pearlie?
There's probably 65, and then whatever the amount is that the little lot you did with the.
And how many are at Pearlie?
Pearlie is way under, you can't really go by Pearlie.
Yeah, you can't go by Pearlie because they park all down North Street and it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
It's
that's,
crazy. It's crazy where they park.
It's a nightmare where they park in Pearlie, yeah.
Over by the
yeah, I wouldn't
library.
decrease
I mean,
it
I
by
don't,
one.
I don't see anybody sitting in the parking lot and calling their kid and say, "Come on down." We're
No,
gonna
but it's
get-"
not just for pickup, it's for, the different events and.
How many events a year that you're gonna have that many that you're gonna fill the lot? You're talking parent-teacher conferences once or twice a year. You're talking the end of the year graduations. There's a week.
Penn nights, the grades, they all run their celebrations at the same time by grade.
Is there a way to, I think everybody's on board with as few parking spaces as you need. I think everybody's on board with that. Is there one calculation or a couple of
He said
just
150.
studies? No, I know that, but that takes into account all of these other components that you're talking about. Something that would allow, that's it. That's the number.
You know, the
Okay.
reason we went
Can-
with that
can-
though is
can
the
it be put
queuing.
on paper? That
You're
believe
still
it or
gonna have
not,
the queuing.
It helps to see.
You're not losing any queuing. They're not gonna go through the parking lots to queue up. They're gonna go down that long road
But the-
past the parent-teacher
But some people
Peter,
will
yeah.
sit there.
We've made that
Some
point
people
though
will.
to the neighbors,
Right.
to reassure folks that we're not gonna get backups on Elm Street.
No.
We're giving them these options,
Right.
that you
Right.
can pull out of the queuing line, find a parking spot.
And wait.
And meet your kid that way,
Right.
or park and walk in and get your younger kid
Yeah.
out of kindergarten.
They're having problems with
You
that
know, if we
right now.
take away that ability, I think we're sort of going back on our promise
Exactly.
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
queuing,
you-
you
Yeah.
know,
With all those
affecting
kids.
Elm Street.
I mean, with any luck, I think so many people, the buses are still half empty, at least, but like one thing, like for me, like if my kids have an activity between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, I have to pick them up. The one thing that we're gaining that I don't even think we've talked about is that kids are gonna get home 10 to 15 minutes earlier from Pembroke because they're not gonna have to make that run to the second school and load up that bus. So kids potentially, if school gets out, 2:40, 2:45, kids could potentially be home at like 3:05.
Well,
Which-
we have to think about that because we have to get more buses to be able to do that. So if we stick with our 5 buses, you're still gonna have to, you have 700 kids, you're not moving 700 kids, but you have 700 kids as opposed to 520 kids. So that's gonna still be a challenge we've got to figure out because ideally, right now,
still
if
gonna have the 2 bus
if we had
runs.
7 buses,
Yeah.
we could get everybody out
Right.
time and out we go. But we don't, we have 5.
Right.
So we're doing largely a single run with 2 tiny little
Second run.
second runs.
Yeah.
But I just want people to be thinking it's automatically the case that everybody's gonna get out at one time, that we're not gonna have to do double bus runs. We may have to, just unless we increase it.
But even the double bus runs, they'll get home, about 20 minutes earlier. I think that,
I-
you're
I
not
love
gonna
to
have the
believe
two,
that, and I hope that
you're not
happens.
gonna have the 2 runs to the schools. Which you're telling me, loading up at Pembroke, getting them, going through town, at 3 o'clock when everybody's picking up and going there,
Yeah.
that's,
Maybe, I'm hoping.
so. But I still think we need all the parking spots because parking is just, we can't go in, build a new school and have the parking issues that we have at Pearlie and Pembroke today. We can't.
Well,
All,
he
all
just
the moves
mentioned.
we've made, Peter, have actually, reduced the number of parking spots. Here, putting in islands there, even back here, we had more at one time. So everything we've done has been
reduced it
nibbling
by
away
about
at
30.
at the parking.
So we're
We were less
You know.
than we were last.
Yeah, I
so
think we started off with like
230
288.
instead of 265?
No, we were at, in the 280s before.
I think we had 288 when we started this.
And you don't think that a child is gonna walk out to the parking lot?
If you look at Pembroke now, they all go through the
It's
parking lot.
because it's so chaotic now that they have to control it.
Well, they're still gonna be
They can't
picking
allow
up their
them to
kid
walk
out in the front of the school. And there's gonna be the person with the bullhorn saying car number 75. and they're gonna go, and that's how it's gonna happen. They're not gonna, I mean,
But
they're not gonna walk
It's
out to
also
the
not
parking
gonna be
lot.
the same path as the buses.
How does it work now, Carol? I mean,
It's
it
not
sounds
now.
like that's a security issue.
An alternate arrangement. I worked in another district that had a similar size school. But at pickup, because there were parking spaces, parents parked and parents walked to the school. So children were released kind of all at once. There still had to be a visual, but you weren't having to queue up because there were enough spaces. So that potentially could happen, that if parents can go off and park in those spots, the parents will come up to the school, the kids go all at once, so you're not having to queue up and wait for 20 minutes for your child to come out.
They can say to the parents, you can't queue up, park and walk up.
Yeah.
Is
They
that
have
is
that.
that what's gonna be said?
Right, they have to make
I think
those
that's what I'm pretty
determinations.
sure.
I don't think
Right.
they can now because there's no parking,
Yeah.
so.
Get in the line and it's a queue, and they call you.
Remember too, I mean,
That's what they do.
who's gonna be
Oh,
there?
I was wondering that.
We have to have some flexibility in how it's designed.
Oh,
And,
okay, that's
You know,
what I was
we in
thinking.
fact think about, you know, someday cars may go here and buses may go there.
Yeah.
It may make no sense today, but we designed to make sure they can
Yeah.
do that for flexibility. So it's hard to know.
Yeah,
All right, can we
right.
take out the island in the middle of the parking lot to the?
No,
You're
no,
gonna have to arm
no.
wrestle Bob on that one.
The one we just added.
You just said how good your snowplower is. He can manage.
Well,
And
you
you'll
know-
have a camera to see that he does.
No, not out in the parking lots. Yeah, you're gonna have more days of no school. Because it's
Well-
gonna take us,
Opening.
it's gonna take us a lot longer to plow that building than it is the building now.
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah, but it's a lot bigger.
So I guess and then again, I guess we don't have to plow Curly.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, that's it.
not as quickly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just the front.
It's just pre-K and it starts
Yeah.
later, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
But you're right about one thing. You might not necessarily have to plow that one.
Yep.
You know, if you at least get the others cleared so that faculty can come in.
Yeah.
Is there money in the budget to buy equipment to do stuff to the fields and to the building itself, like snow blowers and things like that?
We've got a small outdoor storage room here that would be for, you know,
But
hand snow
is there
blowers.
money in the
There
budget
is
to buy
shovels.
any of that?
Yeah, yes, you can buy snow blowers, you can buy shovels, and, you know, groundskeeping equipment here. Whether you can afford to buy a tractor or a
Well, they have a
truck or
tractor, so
plow.
they need a snow blower for the tractor.
Yeah. You could buy that equipment to maintain.
Like an attachment.
One of the other issues is, that's been requested,
park
that's not in the scope of the project, is an outdoor storage garage for maintenance equipment on this site. And again, we said, you know, it's gonna be 100% of Georgetown anyways, we're beyond, you know, MSBA reimbursable. But it's also not in the budget at this time, but if it's really to maintain these fields, you know, maybe something over here could be built at a later date. And we could, bring at least electric power to that location now while we're doing some work here. But that would be it, electric power. Then the question is, well, could we put a concrete slab in and let students from Whittier who have masonry skills come build a garage at some point? We have done that on another project. The project provided a slab and the school district did the rest.
I think a DRA maintenance building would look nice there.
So that's the extent of, you know, groundskeeping equipment here, but like we said, yes, you could buy a plow, or a snow blower to hook up to your truck.
That needs to be put in the budget then. That
Yeah,
needs to be.
just-
No,
just-
that needs to be in the budget.
Yeah,
Well,
washing machine, you
yeah.
can buy,
Equipment.
this would be budget,
That's
equipment
the
budget.
FFA.
He needs to get that.
And
There's
that's
a
not
couple
part
last
of the
things.
1,200 for students?
There's two
That's
separate,
1,200
there's two
per
separate allowances.
student for furniture and equipment, and another 1,200 for technology
Technology.
equipment.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
so if you save a few desks and chairs and teachers' desks, you can afford to buy more plows and snow blowers.
The kids don't want more plows.
It's for the school, because we don't do the sidewalks.
Yes, yeah, you want
So
stuff
we
to
do
be able to
we do the
maintain
parking lot and the driveway, that's it.
close in.
So it's gonna take them a lot longer to do the sidewalks and,
Could you look at what he said, just as I'm saying that, so that that sidewalk you're talking about going from the outer parking lot up could be just plowed by a truck?
Oh, this
On the right
side?
hand side?
I'll measure my truck now, but
How,
the
how
problem,
wide?
well, it's an 8-foot plow, but it angles, so it could be less, it could be 6 foot.
But
I'll
what's the
measure,
wheelbase?
I'll measure that.
That's what matters.
Yep.
yeah.
And the other
mean, it's
problem is
just,
I'd have to go,
you know.
like, right now, basically, we plow the schools at the end of the storm. My pickup truck, if we have 2 feet of snow, is not gonna make it through there.
Well, that's why I was thinking, because that's an incline, isn't it, from the parking lot up to the school?
You know, all the grades would be done, you know, at drivable, you know,
Yeah.
these are all walkable, so
Well,
they're
that's what
less
I was
than
thinking,
5%.
walking wise,
You
you
know,
want that.
None of these are any steeper, I think, than maybe 6 or 7% for cars, even.
What does percent mean, like,
5 feet in 100,
okay.
you know, 5%. So it's pretty gradual. At 5 in 100, you don't even need handicap ramp. It's just a
Okay.
slope walkway. You know, so the steepest street in town are probably 10 or 12, maybe even more. Yeah. So, you know, we would grade this less than
Pretty
that,
low.
you know, throughout. We sort of ran out of time on our site meeting, so that's why we're saying there's a follow-up teleconference call, first of all, and then a follow-up meeting on the
Right,
17th.
the 17th, we'll
To,
get that.
to further explore.
Is
you
there a
know, the
time?
site.
Not ready to approve the site.
Peter, are you in on that conference?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Not really.
One thing we did touch on was Emergency Drive.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Johnson's property.
Mm.
And I apologize, I don't have that part of the survey there, but remember that let's see if I draw Elm Street and this road comes down, her house is here. Her driveway is on this side, the right-hand side of her house.
Right.
We'd like to propose to have the curb cut and driveway be on the left side of her house, to get it away from the town's property there. And even though that will be a fairly significant change for her from the way she uses it, we do have to think of future owners and try to sort out the ownership and maintenance and issues of having, you know, a private driveway go over public land, particularly one that we're now going to plow and maybe allow children to walk to school on.
Yeah.
I think we need a little more clearer separation.
I think her door is on the right side of the building.
Yeah.
Her side
She
door.
has a front door.
Her
She
front
has a
door.
front, yeah.
When I talked with her about this
She has a
idea,
side door.
she was intrigued by it. We didn't get any further in that, but what it does is it makes her front door truly a front door again.
Yeah.
And there was just a little too much for her to think about how they have the house inside set up right now. But you'd still want to get side access. But if
It
we
could
can
still be a
separate,
path
if we
around
can
to that
separate
side.
her from that
Yeah.
right of way, and she's happy with
And
that.
then we could, you know, plant some buffering trees and put up a fence and just, you know, nicely define the property line separation between private property and public property, which I think everyone will feel more comfortable with in the end.
And that would all have to come out of the allowance. I mean, not all of it, but
Yeah,
we have
well,
to separate.
yeah, there's a question as to how this actually gets accomplished, you know, because that's another sort of messy issue of doing public work on private property, you know,
Doesn't go.
with public funds.
Right.
So,
Can you?
you know,
Can't
I don't know if there's a way to do that, frankly, but it's more probably some kind of allowance or adjustment that's made some other way. But
Usually you can do it if you have some kind of a fair swap, you know, that you do legally. You get some consideration for giving her some work, so we'd have to kind of work that out.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a
Yeah.
case to be made for that.
so, yeah, that was the last point of discussion that we did have, and Rob.
The
went
rock
spoke
wall
of that.
doesn't go all the way down to Elm Street? There
What's
is a
that?
rock wall there.
On the other side.
One side does. On the right-hand side of that, as
Yeah.
you're looking into it from Elm Street, does come virtually to the road. But the left side stops back here at her property line,
Oh,
the stone wall.
oh.
So at some point, we'd want a gate too, to keep cars from driving up there, you know. But we'd want to maintain pedestrian access, so, you know, we'd make an arrangement so it's wide enough for pedestrian to walk through, but not a car to
Did you
drive.
say 2 gates or 1 gate?
I think if we have enough room there, that we could do 1 gate for vehicles and a pedestrian path around it to avoid the gate. So, you know, Peter would have to open it up to plow it, but on a day-to-day basis, you know, pedestrians could walk around it.
Is there gonna be a sidewalk going up that way?
That's the idea, that there be some kind of path. Yeah. And it also requires relocating a telephone pole on Elm Street, because the road would come right down in the middle of it. So maybe that work can be part of the Elm Street improvement.
In that emergency entrance isn't gonna be used for building.
Not day to day.
Okay.
Right, that's the idea.
You meant for construction.
Yeah.
Oh, for construction, we haven't, you know, there is some construction work, to get a water line down there.
Yep.
So they have to do some grading, anyways. Beyond that, we haven't really talked about how we would allow or prohibit traffic on that. That's still an ongoing question.
It would be a real challenge for her and her husband to have that traffic for construction and the dust, and that would be really hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus, it's gonna be so narrow, and the topography's not, I mean, you're gonna be bringing heavy equipment in.
Right.
But not
It's
the
hard to
right-
imagine, you know, you don't have great overhead, you know, if you would try to bring a crane in there or something. The trees are so low and that sort of thing, so. So it's unlikely that we'd have construction traffic. We might maintain it as an emergency egress for the construction site, you know, I don't know, but it sort of matters for the sequence of operation there. So, yeah, that's the extent of the site discussion notes that we had.
Carl, do you have a whole lot of excess cut that from the
You
site?
know what we have, that is sort of another level of discussion we need to have.
Yes, Tina.
When we try to balance the site, there's sort of a fourth dimension of time involved as to
Understand.
when the fill is excavated and when it can be reused,
Understand?
you know?
Yeah.
One of the first things, yes, there's some cut to get to the footprint area, that's gonna be the first thing built. And there's some fill needed down here, that's the low point, but we can't fill that until the new septic system is built, because that's the existing septic system. So, there may be desire to stockpile, you know, if this site is too tight to stockpile, we might wanna give the contractor a stockpile area, as opposed to having to pay him to haul it off and pay him to bring in new fill to fill this. So we're thinking about that, but I don't think we'll have excess material permanently, you know. Either we'll have to buy new to replace it, or if we could stockpile it, we could reuse it.
I was thinking.
Because back here, there's a lot of fill too, to create this playground. So,
At one time, you talked about them trying to do the septic in the summertime, that's no more.
yeah, we're gonna avoid that because that would overly complicate the project,
Yep.
and we wanna allow them to keep this online and build that at their convenience the second summer.
And you know, split the responsibility. We could pick up a substantial amount of time, but we looked at it, we don't pick up a lot of time when we split the
Right, do you
responsibility.
guys, I don't think we
Did this
are,
get signed?
Yes,
Yes, it did, thank
Yes.
you.
yep, thank you.
I don't think we're at a point to, just make a vote on the site, but can I just for a show of support as far as the direction that they're going in, just because Rob and Ellie
Mhm.
are gonna be meeting and doing teleconferencing with them, just to, you know, just take a little vote, just to show show of support that they're going in the right direction or anything like that, so. Anybody who's in support of what we said, just raise your hand. Any opposed?
Great, thank you.
You're opposed or you support?
Yeah,
I
we should really
support some
thank
and-
Rob
Close to the-
for,
Okay.
I support
Michelle.
some, so I'll abstain.
Michelle, we should really thank Rob
had
for
need more
spending the
information.
time. He did
Rob
go
spent
through
a
the
ton of time
plans
on
and wrote down a lot of
Saw all
comments that
your-
are very useful and valuable for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'd like to just comment on that vote of confidence, that I'd absolutely love to sit down with these guys and just talk a little bit more about the changes to the playgrounds and.
Yeah, we'd like to.
That's, like to be on the agenda for the 17th, is to actually share with you some playground
Concepts.
samples, concepts from vendors, you know, who can model it three-dimensionally,
Okay.
given the areas that we have now identified.
So did
Right,
you check
so-
to see you can do the 17th?
I can, I have a conference call, what time though, on the 17th?
It's actually more the convenience of Carol and Margaret if we were trying to do it after school.
Like,
I have a conference call that gets over at 3:30.
oh, that's possible.
So 4 o'clock.
So-
4 o'clock.
I'd say safe would be 4:30, because you never know. I
It's
just,
okay, I mean, it's okay with me, I have a negotiation session at 6:30, but I think we'd be done by then.
We could do playgrounds first and then follow up with site issues.
Would that be at Pembroke? Is that where the meeting would be?
Would we be meeting at
Or the-
Pembroke again?
Or do you wanna
Up in
meet?
the library?
It's a group of about,
You can, but
If it's
it's
just you guys, could we meet up
I'd
early?
rather meet
yeah,
it
we can
early.
meet up early.
Early?
Yeah.
it
That's
just takes
fine.
me half an hour to get out of Portsmouth, so.
So
Okay,
the
you wanna
structure of
say
the
4:30?
site committee, subcommittee, is just
You do 4:30?
Rob is the leader?
Rob and I are
Yes.
both attending.
Oh, because I was the first one to sign up for site and attended
You
the
can
playground
come.
meeting, but I haven't left out since.
You may come,
Okay.
because as long as we don't have a quorum, it's
Right,
okay.
right.
So as long as no one else jumps up, we're here, okay?
Well, that means
Yeah,
seven,
that's my
right? You're
I'd like to
saying-
go to that too.
How much is
Voting.
the quorum?
We can't have it, we don't wanna have a subcommittee, this is not a
We're not doing
subcommittee.
a sub, we're just trying to get a couple
When
of
you
point people
talk
to
about
work
the
with them,
interior
just
of the
because there's
school,
so
different
much
parts,
To
are
help
you
you
gonna bring
answer
samples?
to
Yep.
come up with something like
Next
this
week.
to come back to our
Is
meeting.
Mike gonna be there, Mike Anderson?
But when you said quorum, that means
Next
seven
week.
people.
Next Tuesday night.
Right.
No, no,
So we, as long
don't
as you
want
don't
to-
have seven,
Yes,
you're
with
fine.
Jeff Wade.
With Jeff Wade.
Yeah.
we don't wanna have to do an agenda, we don't want a subcommittee,
Yeah,
we
I-
just want.
Changing the rules midtown.
No, we changed them a while ago, Tilly, you
Yeah,
missed a
no.
couple of meetings.
One.
We changed them way back,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
I
so
missed some.
Carl,
Meetings that
Courtney,
Thursday.
so by doing that meeting on the
One
17th,
Thursday, right? Is with, well, with Jeff.
I assume that on the 22nd, then we're gonna have to add site to that agenda.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
get that as
Oh.
Pembroke.
Yeah.
Thursday, wait, that's coming Thursday.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Now, is that gonna be enough time, Bob, to?
Well, I
you
mean,
know,
I
in
think
case-
after all we heard here, we'll just have a
Courtney,
few updates,
Okay.
so we can go quicker. We don't have to
Okay, and then you'll meet on
rehash
the
everything
17th,
again.
and then we'll
For
meet
the
back
full
here
committee.
on the 22nd on site.
And Rob's gonna talk to them with some of the other issues he has. so that
You
will
have like
speed things
ongoing
up.
stuff that you're gonna be working
Yeah.
on, okay, and so that's our time frame right now for the site.
Right, so how
Um,
quick can we do mechanical?
And then,
Well, I have supposed
Oh,
to
we have
be-
to do that tonight? We did it last time,
no, we
even though there
didn't.
wasn't a quorum, but.
What was the one in the evening for?
We need to just run
We
through it
need to
quickly.
vote it.
We need to just run through it quickly and we'll
Oh.
take a vote, sorry. That's, I just have one more. Do we have a location for Thursday's meeting?
At Pembroke, this Tuesday?
Uh,
Yeah, Pembroke, 6:30. And there's actually meetings that afternoon as well, this Thursday.
What meetings are in the afternoon?
Teaching at Bethany,
It's on the list.
followed by,
Okay, all right, so quickly, we're just gonna go through,
Thursday, 3:30, she said.
Mechanical.
George. George, met with Courtney and Carl, and some other consultants to discuss the mechanical, electrical, and the plumbing back in December, and we're just gonna go through quickly just what they went through.
Mike Anderson was also present.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mike Anderson, yeah.
There.
Just so we can just get a vote on that, just to move forward, and then I promise we will be done. All right. Carl, you wanna just run
We
through that
started with
quickly?
plumbing. One of the important things we just mentioned about a possible outdoor maintenance shed.
Yep.
It will have no plumbing in it. No water line, no floor drains. We don't want to get into that.
Electrical conduit.
hassle.
It's on conduit, yeah.
Right. One of the typical decisions we have on elementary schools is in kindergartens where they have their own self-contained toilet rooms, right off the classroom.
Yep.
Is the height of the fixtures in there,
Okay.
because they have these little baby fixtures that sometimes people prefer to use as opposed to full-size adult ones. After researching it, talking about it, and weighing the pros and cons, it was decided to do wall-mounted ones, not the little baby ones that are floor-mounted. Make them wall-mounted, and we can mount them a little bit lower than full-size adult ones, but they still will meet handicap access code. So
And Mike
talking
and-
about
Okay,
50
so you can't
50
do floor mounted.
15 inch?
15
Yes.
inch off the floor, yeah.
And
So Carl, just remind me, I wasn't part of that discussion, because most of the times I see little ones.
Yeah.
In kindergarten rooms.
These are
what's
still
the reason
lower.
for the-
These are
15
still
is
lower
low.
than adult ones,
So,
but they're not the little baby ones
They're
you
not the
see in
teeny ones.
preschool
Yeah.
that are like 10 inches
okay,
off the.
but they're not adults.
But they're not full-size
Full
adult
size,
ones.
okay, very fine.
So we're gonna meet the requirements, okay. Was that a question that somebody had asked?
We ask it
Oh,
just
okay,
because districts have preferences, perhaps, and,
The toilets
Yeah,
will
we
be
didn't want
supplied by
both
a
sides.
segregated water supply.
not all of them, George. Remember the, just to save on the plumbing, we're gonna, you talking about the recycled water?
Right.
Yeah, it would only be, this stack of toilets here, that would be serviced, and, you know, not these kindergarten toilets that are way over here, cause then we have to run double piping throughout the building. We're trying to save costs there. Basically, one of the concepts in the toilet rooms where we're talking about plumbing is that most everything is no touch. So, you know, like you're used to nowadays, put your hands under the faucet, automatically runs, it stops. There are flushometers on the plumbing fixtures that are automatic flush. You can, you know, you still have manual override. And they actually, instead of batteries, well, I guess they have a battery, but it gets recharged by the light in the room. Has a little solar collector on top, the faucets
There's
and
some
the flushometers.
cut sheets.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So
we
they
have.
don't
Yeah,
need
actually,
any
you know what?
maintenance at all?
Very little maintenance. Don't have to change the batteries, which is great.
Is that
Did you get a
good
copy
in
of
the
that?
bathrooms that they didn't work?
Where they
Yeah,
die,
never
right,
work,
because they
yeah.
don't change the batteries.
Where are they?
Yeah, they're sometimes way underneath, they're kind of a pain to get to, or there's special little kinds of batteries.
So we decided we're no propriety items, but we're talking
Right.
like Sloan type sensor.
Yes, we'd write it around a certain quality of
Design
fixture.
it on there.
But you have to write, like everything, an open specification, have 3 equals at least,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Carl, you never mentioned soap.
They don't use it.
Whether soap would
It
be,
never came up.
whether it be automatic or not,
Yeah.
there'd definitely
Is it a
be
pump
soap.
or a twist
There'd
or
definitely be soap
foam or
dispensers, the
gel?
question is it automatic?
Yeah. you
Yeah, we'll
just-
check that with Mike Anderson.
Okay, because I
Yeah.
realized afterwards they never came up.
Yeah, they obviously do have automatic soaps too.
Yeah.
And likewise, it was voted to, in this group, to have hand dryers as opposed to paper towels, the air, because again, it's no touch.
What type of, are they gonna be the good ones that will?
The good
dry
ones
in?
that work.
That really work.
The loud one.
The ones that'll blow those
Because
little kids
otherwise,
all over.
yeah,
Towels at all, no?
yeah.
Mike pointed out that there is a paper budget, and he also says kids use hand towels or stuff in the toilets.
Yeah, for vandalism.
Yeah, he was really
No, I
against
just-
paper.
Make sure you just use one that works instead of one you
Yeah.
hit and then you're
Right.
wiping it on your hands, your pants.
Okay.
And remember, there are no doors here too, so that's another sanitary thing. You don't have to open a door to come in and out. There's just sort of the blind that you walk around. So
Out in the
it's
bathroom to
done
get
a
into
lot
the
for sanitary reasons as well as security reasons. So you
So we're
can,
not gonna have a sink in the hallway like there is now.
no, it's inside the room,
It
but
doesn't work.
not too far inside the
Only if
room.
you want one.
Roman fountains.
One that doesn't work, right?
We should put those some places planters.
I was thinking maybe bird baths
Yeah.
out in the playground.
Because they are
There you go.
cool.
You know, maybe in that island in the parking lot.
Yeah. It can stand a beating from the plow, is that it?
Yeah.
It's made this long.
There will be drinking fountains at all the boys and girls rooms on the corridor side.
Poland Spring
It
drinking
will be
fountains.
cooled water, not just, room temperature.
Bottle fillers.
And then there'll be bottle fillers as well.
that on the notes?
So
Oh,
that,
that's good.
yeah, we
I
didn't
need
put
to
that in the
put that- I
notes,
need
we
to
should
add
have
that
that,
Take
yeah.
that and go right to your water fountain, and you put
Right.
it there, and the water comes out.
So we encourage people to start using bottled water.
Is the water filtered?
We talked about
So-
that we may think about centrally filtering it. I don't know if she put that in her notes here. Because, was it you, George, that mentioned the
George,
I was talking
heavy,
about maybe
mineral
some type of
content.
inline filtering system because
Yeah.
of the iron and manganese that's in the,
right, right,
that doesn't always get filtered out of our water.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I have one of my own
Mhm.
kitchen faucet, just,
Yep.
but there are
Yeah.
inline systems that have a backflush
Right,
that.
at the incoming service that you can have it, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't see too many kids using the fountains
If the water doesn't taste good.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And parents will encourage it, though, if they know it's being filtered.
Yeah, I
and they'll
would say.
encourage bringing bottled water if it's not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Then we went over some HVAC items, and again, confirmed sort of the scope of air conditioning in the building. That's always an important decision.
Yeah.
And basically, we confirmed where we were before.
Yeah.
that, the center of the building, basically the office, the library, the cafeteria, through here is air conditioned. The classrooms are not fully air conditioned, but they're sort of tempered. In other words, the ductwork that serves those, that's supplying ventilation, is not upsized the way it would need to be to fully air condition. So you have a slightly smaller duct, but you're still providing cool air to those spaces. So it's kind of a compromise that works well.
I have individual controllers in each room.
Sensors,
Sensors.
yes.
That the teachers can't,
It's
already-
limited
You
in
have
a couple
2 degree
degrees,
swing
up or down.
yeah.
Yep.
Control of the computer, then you have just a couple
Yeah.
of degrees.
And likewise in the kitchen and gym, there's some partial cooling there too, introduced to each
Are
of
there
those spaces.
windows in the gymnasium?
There may be some plastic cowl wall,
Translucent.
translucent, not operable windows.
And so it'll let sunlight
It
in?
would let light in
Will
diffusely.
there be shades? Okay.
No, it's
Well,
So
they're
you
diffuse.
translucent, the
Okay.
sun.
Yeah.
Just for that purpose,
Alright.
Peter. So you're not blinded as you're going in for a layup or something, or playing volleyball, looking up at the ceiling. Interior spaces we talked about. Any interior spaces that don't have access to windows would also get air conditioned. There's only a handful of them, and they fortunately are located close to the center, so they can, sort of share in the air conditioning.
You have water faucets
What's
near the
MDF?
gym, in the gym?
There are drinking fountains and on those men's and women's rooms right outside the gym. We recommend putting them outside the gym, so if people spill water, it doesn't mess up the floor or be a slippery slip hazard.
Right,
You usually don't want any water in the gymnasium.
Right,
You don't want any
right.
coolers or anything in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have occupancy centers too, written down here.
We have occupancy sensors for lights. For ventilation, we have occupancy sensors in the gym and cafeteria, so that if those spaces only have a handful of people in them, the ventilation only provides enough air for those few people. If you have 100 people in there, it cranks up the motor and you get a lot more ventilation.
Yeah, usually you see those in the large volume areas, we have
Right.
a lot of people. It measures the CO2 and then it just kicks on your ventilation when you need it. So you're not wasting and bringing in ventilation when there's nobody in there.
It's
Margaret?
amazing.
I apologize, I wasn't at the meeting with the air conditioning.
Yeah.
But we were just wondering, we do have summer school for young children that need full year school. So where would there be maybe air conditioned rooms?
Well, in the center of the building, the music rooms are in there. So there's 2 of those large spaces.
Okay.
One there, one upstairs. Over here, there's smaller, there's a conference room, there's these rooms. The interior,
Okay.
they're air conditioned.
So because the music rooms are large enough, those could hold,
These are very large,
15,
those
20
could hold
children.
60, 70 kids.
all right.
Yeah.
You said the library too?
In the library too.
The library, too.
I have computers up there.
Yep.
What is, what's MDF/IDF? What is
Those
that?
are the computer networking rooms.
Oh.
Um,
That'll be cool.
Those are cool, they're actually cooled year round because even in the winter, they generate so much heat internally. You don't want to damage the equipment, so.
Usually have a split system.
Yeah, they just have a
individual
little-
Split system, because they're
little-
small rooms, there'd be a little unit in the roof
There's
that
probably
just
one in
cools
this
that
room right there.
Because those things will run in the middle of January, because you get so much heat generation in those rooms.
So they have their own system, you
So
don't have to
that-
turn on the whole building.
So you
air
guys didn't
conditioning.
change any of the, that sounds like a lot of the
It-
AC
it's
that we
all
talked about
exactly the
during
same.
All
the
the same.
schematic design.
Nothing
Yeah.
changed.
Okay.
And we're still anticipating the so-called fresh air notification system, where when the temperature is right outside, we want people to be able to open the windows.
Yep.
And we need to signal when that temperature is right, so there'll be a little weather station on the roof, interlocked with the ventilation equipment, and a green light will come on in the hallways.
And that means they can open their
That
windows?
means you can open the windows. It means you should open the windows because the ventilation is going to throttle down. And if you want fresh air, that's how you get fresh air.
Are there gonna be shades on the window too?
There'll be shades in the windows. Yeah, we have east and west exposure for most of the classrooms, so we really want. And generally, we recommend perforated shades, the kind you can see through, but they really knock down the glare.
Would these kind of things need special training to maintain them?
The HVAC system
Yeah.
certainly does. you know, that's very
The electrical,
sophisticated.
the lighting, yeah, the lighting system, there's a lot of
But
training
the
involved.
rest
So
of
you-
it, we try to make it as simple as possible for those things that the occupants can and should be involved
Yeah.
with, like opening the windows. They'll, you know,
So,
We'll have
Carol, you were
signage for
talking
that.
about a maintenance person, so you'd have to look for qualifications.
yes.
Oh, you
it's-
train them?
To meet this.
We train them.
Yeah, it's not just a custodian anymore,
Yeah.
you know, turning on the
No,
boiler.
it's not a
It's
custodian.
more sophisticated than
Building
that.
systems are very sophisticated,
Yeah,
so really
yeah.
someone has to be comfortable with those systems, lighting and HVAC.
Facilities manager.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Facilities manager, you're
Yes.
right.
The boilers in the school are gonna be high efficiency gas boilers. One of the things we pointed out here, that, those kind of boilers, when they burn natural gas, they do cause, condensation. You get water, you know, coming back down the stack. It doesn't all evaporate. And you have to collect that water, and usually in most systems you know, collect it, put it into a floor drain, and it, you know, drains off. Here we have a septic system, on site, and there's some nervousness about putting that water back into the ground because it's not really hazardous, but it may have some metals in it that, you know, if we were to put it in the sewer system, might, you know, affect the little bugs that are in the septic system that cause it to work well. You don't want to kill those, so.
What about a dry well?
Exactly, so we
That's
put
what you need.
a holding tank
Holding tank.
that gets pumped
You
out.
just can't dump it in the ground, it's a
Yeah.
holding tank, you gotta pump out.
We don't want it to affect the groundwater either. We don't want to just put it in the ground and affect the groundwater. Because again, you know, right now we're pursuing whether we can do that or not, Tilly. Right now, nobody's confident enough that the water is, you know, safe enough that, you know, especially if we're in a, what is it, George, water resource area. You know, if we told them we're putting this, you know,
A dry well, and, yeah.
yeah, they might be nervous about that.
So who would pump
So-
it out, like Clean
The
Harbors?
school, yeah, I don't know if it has to be Clean Harbor, but
Yeah.
really it's just somebody who's gonna take it to a town that has a sewer treatment plant and put it in there. You don't have to take it very far,
It's not hazardous.
It's not hazardous.
yeah.
How much water would it hold?
It might need to be pumped out twice a season, a heating season. I forget the gallon, but that's how we sized it.
Expensive.
Yeah, that's a little maintenance
That's a
there,
little
but the
expensive.
efficiency on
It's
these
hazardous.
boilers is such that we still recommend them.
Yeah, the cost
Because-
of pumping it out, it pales in comparison to what you're gonna save on
In
the high
heating.
efficiency boilers.
Right, right.
They're, again, like I said, they go a long way, you're gonna save a lot of money with those.
We went over on the electric side. Another thing to confirm is we are going to have emergency generators for the emergency lights. If the power goes out, you know, we don't rely on battery type systems. We'll have an emergency generator power them.
150 kilowatt?
I forget the size, George. Was that what he said?
Yeah.
But because you've got a generator, you can put other things on it. You know, and typically we want to put the heating system on it so the building doesn't freeze. So you have some pumps circulating water through the building. Not that you could continue to live in the building, but it would certainly keep it from freezing. And then there's a certain amount of optional things, like in the kitchen, we may want to be able to at least, you know, keep the freezers and coolers from going bad and losing that food that's in there. So we put those on the emergency power. We'd probably have a few outlets available that could be utilized if you were to, you know, have a power outage in the neighborhood in the middle of winter and you wanted a place. We can't call it officially emergency shelter, but because it's got a generator, the lights are on and you can have some heat there. It's a place you could bring people and at least, you know, set up some cots if you wanted to, and recharge phones or plug in a little microwave.
Does,
Big generator. I mean,
does the person that designs what size generator, would he be able to tell us what we could put on it?
That's exactly what we did.
Maximum, okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Because
Yeah.
it seems like the one at the high school, you could add a lot more too. And I know the one at the public safety building, it was put in 20, 30 years ago. It could do the whole building now.
Yeah.
And before it couldn't. So, you know, we just want to try to put
Yeah.
as much on it as we can.
Sure, sure.
And they mark outlets too, the ones that are on emergency power versus
Yeah.
the ones that are.
And then in terms of some of the environmental things that relate to mechanical, electrical, we still intend to have solar PV panels on the south-facing roofs of the cafeteria and gym. there.
Did you say that something about 10%, supply 10% of the power?
If we can get to 10% of the power,
We're
we
gonna get
get,
15 kVA.
we get a
right now.
lead
The
point for
system's
that,
15 kVA.
for alternative energy.
We haven't scoped that then as far as we can.
We haven't determined whether we're there yet, because we have to calculate the energy demand first, the electric demand, to know what 10% is. So we're working on that. We still intend to have that rainwater collection system, as we said. Basically, it's going to collect water from the flat roofs in this vicinity, put it to a tank here, bring it into a filter here, and then pump it down the hall to flush these toilets there.
Is there an overflow in that?
Yes, that goes into the storm system. And likewise, there's a makeup. You know, if there's not enough rainwater, you use domestic water. So the toilet's always flush. There's never an issue.
It'll all be priced up separate, so you can see exactly what these systems are gonna be costing.
So that's it, in terms of
That's
mechanical,
it.
electrical. Thanks
Okay.
for your patience.
All right, does anyone have any questions about mechanical and electrical?
As I said, most of it, virtually all of it, was consistent with schematic design phase.
The electrical, is it all energy efficient? The lighting?
Oh, yeah, yeah. We checked to see if we can get rebates, but, you know, it's a local electric company, I'm not sure, but sometimes we can actually get direct rebates too, based on the light
Yep.
fixtures they specify.
We'll get it from the gas company.
Yes,
You
on the
have a
gas
local
side.
electric company, you'll get it
All right, so we'd like to take a motion to support the notes from the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing discussion that took place on December 18th, as we just discussed.
So moved.
Second.
More discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you.
Did you get that signed?
We did.
Yes,
We did
I
get that signed.
showed it to him too.
Okay. All right, so our next meeting, so basically, we're meeting the next 2 Tuesdays at 7:30. 15th and the 22nd, and hopefully by next week we'll figure out if we need to schedule one for the 29th.
Right.
And then
Right.
we've got February 5th. All right, so I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Can we keep going? We're on a roll.
Really?
there. We have to leave?
Second? Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Because we
Good time.
had-
That's as I can.
Oh, all right, Mark.